Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, she lived alone and she always left the curtain pulled aside. But one morning it was drawn shut. When she yanked it open, there was no one there, just a smudge on the mirror and the word "look" drawn in steam. Her water hadn't been running. Allison Mercer had been a creature of habit for as long as anyone in Oak Ridge, Maine could remember. At 32, she lived a quiet life in the small two-bedroom colonial house she had inherited from her grandmother 4 years earlier. The neighbors on Pine Street described her as pleasant but private. She taught 7th grade English at Oak Ridge Middle School, where colleagues noted her punctuality and meticulous lesson plans. Every weekday morning, Allison followed the same routine. Wake at 5:45 a.m., shower at 5:50, coffee at 6:10, out the door by 6:40. Her bathroom habits were just as methodical. The forest green shower curtain remained drawn back when not in use, a quirk she developed after reading a magazine article about mold growth in hidden, damp places. She would hang her towel on the rack, place her glasses on the sink counter, and leave the bathroom door open to circulate air. On the morning of November 12, 2023, this routine was disrupted in a way that would eventually consume the entire town of Oak Ridge. Allison woke to the sound of her alarm as usual. The house was quiet and still, with only the faint hum of the heating system fighting against the early winter chill. She padded barefoot down the hallway toward the bathroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. When she reached to turn on the light, her fingers paused on the switch. Something felt different. The bathroom door was closed. Allison stood motionless for a moment, hand hovering near the doorknob. Had she closed it last night? No, she never did. She felt a chill run through her body that had nothing to do with the November temperature. Slowly, carefully, she pushed the door open. The bathroom looked normal at first glance. White tiles, pedestal sink, old clawfoot tub with shower attachment. But the shower curtain was drawn closed around the tub. "Hello," she called out, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. No response came from the silent house. Heart-pounding, Allison approached the tub. With one quick motion, she yanked the curtain open, flinching back as it rattled along the rod. The tub was empty. No intruder hiding there, no explanation for the closed curtain. Just as she began to relax, she noticed the bathroom mirror above the sink. Through the faint fog on the glass, someone had written the word "look" with a finger. Below it was what appeared to be a smudged handprint, too large to be her own. Allison backed out of the bathroom, grabbed her cell phone from the bedside table, and called 911. Officer Daniel Morales was the first to respond to Allison's call. A 10-year veteran of the Oak Ridge Police Department, Morales had dealt with break-ins before, but something about this call struck him as unusual from the start. There were no signs of forced entry, he would later testify. All windows were locked from the inside. The front and back doors showed no scratches or damage to the locks. The bathroom itself yielded few clues. Crime scene technicians dusted for fingerprints but found only Allison's throughout most of the house. On the mirror, however, they discovered partial prints that didn't match Allison's or anyone in the local database. Whoever was in Ms. Mercer's bathroom knew what they were doing, Detective Sarah Linden noted in her initial report. They either wore gloves most of the time or carefully wiped down surfaces they touched. The message on the mirror appears to have been deliberate. They wanted to leave that evidence behind. The case might have remained a simple, unsettling break-in, if not for what happened 3 days later. Allison had stayed with her sister in Portland after the incident, but returned home on Friday afternoon, reassured by the new deadbolts and security system the police had helped her install. That night, she double-checked every lock, set the alarm, and went to bed with her phone beside her pillow. At 3:17 a.m., she woke to a notification sound. Her phone screen showed a new email from an account she didn't recognize. Look closer at mailhost.net. The subject line read, "Behind you." The email contained only an image attachment. With trembling fingers, Allison opened it. It was a photograph of her own bedroom, her bedroom as it looked right now, taken from the doorway. The timestamp on the photo showed 3:12 a.m., 5 minutes ago. Allison called 911 again and hid in her closet until police arrived 12 minutes later. Officers searched the house but found no one. The security system had not been triggered. The doors and windows remained locked. The case quickly became a priority for the Oak Ridge Police Department. Detective Linden assembled a task force, and digital forensic specialists traced the email to a public library computer in neighboring Lakeside. Security footage from the library showed only a hooded figure using the computer at 10:47 p.m. the previous evening, hours before the email was actually sent. "We're dealing with someone technologically sophisticated," Linden told the police chief. "They set up a delayed sending mechanism and bounced the signal through multiple servers." As the investigation progressed, unsettling connections began to emerge. 2 years earlier, a similar case had occurred in Lakeside. A single woman found messages written in steam on her bathroom mirror. In that case, nothing had escalated beyond the messages, and the woman had moved away shortly afterward. Digging deeper, investigators discovered 3 additional cases across New England over the past 5 years with striking similarities. Single women living alone, bathroom intrusions, mirror messages, and in 2 cases, delayed emails with photos of the victims' homes. The pattern suggested the work of a methodical stalker, someone who carefully selected victims, studied their routines, and found ways to enter their homes undetected. What remained unclear was why Allison had been targeted and what the perpetrator ultimately wanted. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Reviewing Allison's work history, Detective Linden noticed that 4 years ago, before moving to Oak Ridge, Allison had briefly worked as a substitute teacher at Lakeside High School. During that same period, the school had employed a janitor named Robert Keller, who was later dismissed after female teachers reported feeling uncomfortable around him. Keller had no criminal record, but his employment history showed a pattern. He had worked at facilities near each of the previous victims shortly before the incidents began. More concerning, he had been hired as a night cleaner at Oak Ridge Community College 3 months before Allison's intrusion. The college was less than a mile from her home. When police went to question Keller, they discovered he had quit his job the day after Allison's second incident and vacated his apartment. A search of Keller's abandoned apartment revealed a disturbing collection. In a locked closet, investigators found detailed journals documenting the daily routines of several women, including Allison. Photographs showed her house from various angles, close-ups of her locks, and even pictures through her windows showing her going about her daily activities. Most disturbing was a notebook containing what appeared to be a manifesto. In rambling, sometimes incoherent entries, Keller wrote about awakening women to the vulnerability of their solitary lives. They never look, one entry read. They never truly see how exposed they are until I show them. I become the ghost in their home, the presence they sense but cannot prove. And when they finally look, they can never unfeel the fear. Despite an extensive manhunt, Robert Keller disappeared without a trace. Security cameras captured him boarding a bus to Boston the morning after Allison's second incident, but he vanished after that. Allison Mercer never spent another night in her grandmother's house. She took a teaching position in Arizona and moved across the country. The house on Pine Street remained empty for months before finally selling at well below market value. For the women in the other cases linked to Keller, the knowledge that someone had so easily invaded their most private spaces left lasting psychological scars. 2 moved out of state. 1 underwent extensive therapy for post-traumatic stress. The 4th installed an elaborate security system, but still reports waking up at night, certain someone is watching her. As for Keller, occasional reports surface. A similar incident in Colorado, another in Oregon, but nothing concrete enough to confirm his whereabouts. Detective Linden keeps the case file on her desk. What makes this type of criminal so insidious, she noted in her final report, is that he doesn't need to physically harm his victims to devastate their lives. He steals something more fundamental than physical safety. He takes their sense of security in their own homes, their belief in privacy, their trust in locked doors and drawn blinds. The most unsettling question remains unanswered. During those intrusions, how long did Robert Keller stand in those homes, watching his sleeping victims before leaving his calling card? What else might he have done that left no trace? For the residents of Oak Ridge and the surrounding communities, the message is clear. Sometimes the monster isn't hiding under the bed or in the closet. Sometimes he's the shadow behind the shower curtain, waiting for you to look. Crime 2, it was left on her front step, no note, no tag, just a pink children's backpack zipped shut. Inside were tufts of human hair, all different shades, some braided, and buried in the bottom, a baby tooth and a candy wrapper dated years ago. Sarah Caldwell found it on a Tuesday morning in October. The air was crisp in Oakwood, Minnesota, a town of just under 12,000 residents where Sarah had lived all 38 years of her life. She'd gone out to collect the newspaper, and there it sat, small, innocuous, the kind of backpack you'd see on any kindergartner, except it wasn't supposed to be there. Sarah was a third-grade teacher at Oakwood Elementary. She lived alone in the pale blue Victorian house that had once belonged to her parents. Her neighbors knew her as the quiet woman who tended meticulously to her garden and walked to school each morning at precisely 7:15 a.m. She had no children of her own. When she unzipped the backpack, Sarah didn't scream. Friends would later remark that this was characteristic of her, calm, measured Sarah, who never raised her voice even when her students were at their most rambunctious. Instead, she carefully zipped it back up, placed it in a plastic grocery bag, and called the police. Officer James Reeves arrived 20 minutes later. He'd been with the Oakwood Police Department for 15 years and had never dealt with anything more serious than petty theft and the occasional drunk driver. He photographed the backpack before opening it. Inside, they counted 17 distinct locks of hair. The tooth appeared to be a child's molar. The candy wrapper was from a Laffy Taffy, dated Halloween 2018. Could be a prank, Reeves suggested, but his expression betrayed his doubt. Sarah shook her head. I don't think so, James. Who would do this? They had known each other since high school. In a town like Oakwood, everyone had history. The backpack was sent to the state crime lab. Sarah stayed with her sister that night, unable to sleep in her own home. She kept thinking about the hair, all those different colors and textures. Some of the locks had been cut cleanly, others appeared to have been ripped out. The thought made her stomach turn. 2 days later, another backpack appeared. This time it was found outside Oakwood Elementary, propped against the flagpole. Green, with dinosaur prints. Inside, more hair, another tooth, and a child's drawing of a house with 4 stick figures standing outside. Sarah recognized the drawing immediately. "That's Lily Weber's," she told Detective Karen Hayes, who had been assigned to the case after the second backpack was found. "She drew it last year in my class." Lily Weber was now in 4th grade. She was fine in school that very day, her blonde pigtails intact. But the drawing was unmistakably hers, right down to the purple sun she always included in the corner of her pictures. The town began to whisper. Parents started driving children to school instead of letting them walk. The local newspaper ran a front-page story, and Sarah found herself avoiding the curious stares of neighbors and colleagues alike. "We need to talk about William Payne," Detective Hayes said during their 3rd interview. Sarah's hands tightened around her coffee mug. What about him? William Payne had been Sarah's student 5 years ago, a troubled boy with angry eyes and a talent for mathematics. His mother had been found dead in their bathroom when William was 7. Prescription overdose, ruled a suicide. His father had moved them to Oakwood for a fresh start. "He left town 2 years ago, didn't he?" Hayes asked, though she already knew the answer. His father got a job in Arizona. William would be 13 now. 14, Hayes corrected, and they didn't move to Arizona, Sarah. They never left Minnesota. His father was arrested last year for possession. William's been in foster care in St. Paul. The revelation felt like cold water down Sarah's spine. But what does that have to do with? William's foster mother reported him missing 3 weeks ago. The 3rd backpack arrived the following Monday. This one was left at the public library, where Sarah volunteered on weekends, navy blue with a NASA logo. Inside, more hair, 2 teeth, and a folded piece of notebook paper with a single sentence written in childish handwriting. "You knew and you didn't tell." The hair samples from all 3 backpacks yielded no matches in any database. The teeth were being analyzed, but results would take time. Meanwhile, the town of Oakwood held its breath. Parents checked locked doors twice each night. Children were kept indoors after school. Sarah couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, kept returning to her memories of William Payne, the way he'd flinch when other children came too close, how he'd stay inside during recess to talk about space and numbers. Once he'd told her his mother hadn't killed herself. She was too afraid of pain, he'd said, his voice flat as a frozen pond. Sarah had mentioned it to the principal, who had spoken to William's father. Nothing had come of it. "You knew and you didn't tell," the words haunted her. On the 1st day of November, Detective Hayes called Sarah at 6 in the morning. "We found him," she said, her voice tight. "William. He was living in the old Pearson cabin out by the lake, empty for years since the family moved to Florida." "Is he okay?" A pause. "He's alive, but Sarah, there were things in that cabin. Collections, hair, teeth, articles about his mother's death, and about you." "About me?" "News clippings, that feature the Tribune did when you won the state teaching award. Your picture from the school website, all pinned to the wall." Sarah sat down heavily on her kitchen chair. "Why me?" "He says you were the only one who listened, but not enough, not when it mattered." Later that day, Sarah learned the rest. William's mother's case was being reopened. Toxicology samples had been preserved, and new testing suggested she may not have taken the pills voluntarily. William's father was now a suspect in her death. And William himself, he'd been collecting things, small tokens, from children in Oakwood and surrounding towns. A lock of hair here, offered by a trusting child for $1. A baby tooth there, traded for a piece of candy. For years, he'd been gathering these mementos, building his case in the only way his 14-year-old mind could conceive. The backpacks were his signal, his cry for attention, his evidence. No charges were filed against William. He was placed in a specialized therapeutic facility. The children from whom he'd collected his trophies were all accounted for, all safe. But Sarah requested a leave of absence from teaching. She couldn't walk into her classroom without seeing William's empty desk. Couldn't look at a child's drawing without remembering that folded note, "You knew and you didn't tell." Because she had known, hadn't she, had sensed something wasn't right, had heard William's flat voice saying his mother was afraid of pain, had seen the way his father gripped his shoulder too tightly at parent-teacher conferences. She had known and she had told, but not loudly enough, not persistently enough. The pale blue Victorian house went up for sale in December. Sarah moved in with her sister temporarily, they said, in town. But winter turned to spring and spring to summer, and Sarah Caldwell didn't return to Oakwood Elementary. Sometimes on clear nights, she drives out to the overlook above the town and sits in her car, watching the lights below. She imagines William doing the same from his facility downstate, both of them haunted by questions without answers, by words unspoken. And somewhere in an evidence locker, 3 backpacks filled with hair-gathered dust, relics of a story that continues to unfold in silence, one careful snip at a time. Crime 3, she opened the basement freezer to defrost it, but paused when she saw it, a handprint frozen into the back wall, too small to be hers, too deep to be casual. Under the ice tray was a note, sealed in plastic, "She's still cold." Rebecca Mills had never been one to believe in ghost stories. At 42, she considered herself practical, unflappable, the voice of reason in Amberton, Connecticut, where she'd served as a high school counselor for 15 years. She had raised her daughter Lily alone since her divorce, finding solace in the quiet routine of their century-old colonial home on Marsh Street. The house had belonged to Rebecca's grandmother, with its creaking wooden floors and outdated appliances. The basement freezer, a hulking white chest model from the 1980s, had been making strange humming noises for weeks. On that February morning, with snow falling silently outside, Rebecca decided it was time to empty it, defrost it, and perhaps finally replace it. Lily was away at college, her first year at Bennington. Rebecca had the weekend to herself, time to tackle the household projects she'd been postponing. She descended the narrow wooden stairs to the basement, flicking on the single bulb that cast long shadows across the concrete floor. The freezer sat in the corner, its lid slightly ajar from her last visit. When she lifted the heavy lid, cold air billowed out in a fog. Rebecca began removing the contents, frozen vegetables, meat wrapped in butcher paper, ice cream that Lily had left behind after Christmas break. At the bottom, she found the plastic bags of ice she kept for emergencies. It was only after removing everything that she noticed it, pressed into the layer of frost at the back of the freezer. A child's handprint, small, perfect, as if someone had pressed their palm firmly against the wall of the freezer long enough for the outline to freeze in place. Rebecca stared at it, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. A logical explanation, she told herself. Perhaps Lily, years ago. But the print looked fresh, the edges still sharp, and Lily's hands hadn't been that small in over a decade. She reached in to touch it, then stopped herself. Instead, she took out her phone and snapped a photo. As she did, her hand brushed against the ice tray she hadn't yet removed. It shifted, revealing something underneath, a folded piece of paper sealed in a sandwich bag. Rebecca hesitated before picking it up. Through the plastic, she could see blue ink on white paper. With trembling fingers, she opened the bag and unfolded the note. 3 words written in a childish scrawl, "She's still cold." That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. The note lay on her bedside table, sealed again in its plastic bag. She had spent hours searching the house, looking for signs of intrusion, for any explanation of how someone could have placed the note in her freezer. The doors had been locked, the windows secured. The basement had a small window, but it was painted, shut years ago. At 2 in the morning, she finally called Adam Preston, a detective she knew from her work with troubled teens at the high school. Despite the hour, he answered on the 3rd ring. "Becca, what's going on?" She explained what she'd found, feeling foolish as the words left her mouth. A handprint, a note, no signs of break-in. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Adam said, his voice instantly alert. "Don't touch anything else." When Adam arrived, snow was still falling, coating his dark jacket with white as he came up the porch steps. He'd brought a young officer with him, a woman named Tors who took photographs of the freezer, the handprint, the note. "How long have you had this freezer?" Adam asked, crouching beside it. "It was my grandmother's. She died in 2009, left me the house. The freezer's been here since at least the early 90s. Adam nodded, his expression unreadable. "And you're sure no one has access to your house? No contractors recently? Repairmen?" "No one. I've been meaning to get the furnace checked, but I haven't gotten around to it." Officer Tors was examining the basement window, running her fingers along the frame. "This paint is cracked," she said. "Someone could have forced it open and sealed it again." Rebecca felt her stomach tighten. Who would do that, and why leave that? She gestured toward the freezer. Adam stood, brushing dust from his knees. "I don't know, but we'll find out. In the meantime, I'd like you to stay somewhere else for a few days." Rebecca shook her head. "This is my home. I'm not leaving because of some prank." But that night, after the police had gone, promising to patrol the neighborhood regularly, Rebecca lay awake, listening to every sound in the old house. The wind against the windows, the radiator's hiss, and something else, a soft thumping that seemed to come from the basement. The next morning, bleary-eyed from lack of sleep, Rebecca called Lily at college. "Mom, are you okay? You sound weird." Lily's voice was concerned, instantly alert despite the early hour. "I'm fine, honey, Rebecca hesitated. "Did you ever put anything strange in the basement freezer, maybe as a joke?" "The freezer? No, why would I?" "Not even when you were little, maybe with a friend." There was a pause. "Mom, what's going on?" Rebecca sighed. "It's nothing, just found something odd while defrosting it. Probably just ice buildup shaped like something else." After hanging up, Rebecca called the school, asking for a personal day. Then she went to the local library. If there was anything strange about her house's history, Marion Getz would know. The librarian had been Amberton's unofficial historian for decades. The house on Marsh Street, Marion's eyes widened behind her thick glasses. Your grandmother's place. Rebecca nodded. Marion disappeared into the archives, returning with a bound collection of local newspapers. There was something long time ago, before your grandmother bought it. She flipped through brittle yellow pages until she found what she was looking for. Here. The headline was small, buried on page 4 of the Amberton Gazette from April 1973. Local child still missing after 3 months. The article was brief. 8-year-old Eliza Compton had disappeared from her home on Marsh Street in January. Despite extensive searches, no trace had been found. The family was planning to move away, unable to bear the constant reminders of their loss. Was she ever found? Rebecca asked, her mouth suddenly dry. Marion shook her head. One of Amberton's unsolved mysteries. People said the father did it. He was drinking heavily after losing his job, but nothing was ever proven. That evening, Rebecca sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, the newspaper article Marion had photocopied for her beside it. Online searches revealed little more, a few follow-up articles, mentions of searches, a statement from Richard Compton, Eliza's father, maintaining his innocence. A knock at the door startled her. It was Adam, his expression grim. "We found something," he said when she let him in. The lab analyzed the paper from the note. It's old, at least 30 years old, based on the composition. And the handwriting, he hesitated. "We compared it to samples from old school records. Rebecca, it matches Eliza Compton's." Rebecca felt her legs weaken. She sank into a chair. "That's impossible. That note wasn't there a week ago. I would have noticed." "Are you sure about that? When was the last time you cleaned out the freezer completely?" She tried to remember. Maybe 2 years ago, when Lily left for college and I was reorganizing everything. Adam sat across from her. "Rebecca, we need to consider all possibilities here, including that this note has been in there since the 1970s. And the handprint, it was fresh, Adam. The edges were sharp." He had no answer for that. That night the thumping from the basement was louder. Rebecca lay in bed, listening, her heart racing. At midnight she finally gathered her courage. She took a flashlight and her phone and descended the stairs. The basement was cold, colder than it should have been. The single bulb cast weak light over the concrete floor. The freezer hummed in the corner, its lid closed. Rebecca approached it slowly, placing her hand on the plastic surface. It felt normal, just a freezer. She took a deep breath and lifted the lid. Empty, clean, no handprint, no note. She had removed everything the day before, defrosted it as planned. There was nothing unusual now. She was about to close it when she noticed something along the back edge, a seam in the insulation that didn't look right. Rebecca shone her flashlight on it and realized there was a small gap between the inner plastic shell and the outer casing. She pressed it and felt it give slightly. With trembling fingers, she pried at the edge, peeling back the plastic liner. Behind it was a space, narrow but deep, and within that space, something wrapped in what looked like an old blanket. Rebecca backed away from the freezer, fumbling for her phone. She dialed Adam's number with shaking hands. 3 days later, the local news reported what the police had found in Rebecca Mill's basement freezer. Human remains, determined to be those of a child, preserved in the space between the freezer's walls for nearly 50 years. Preliminary identification suggested they belonged to Eliza Compton. Further investigation revealed that Rebecca's grandmother had purchased the house directly from Richard Compton in 1974, a year after his daughter's disappearance. The freezer had come with the house. What no one could explain was the handprint in the frost, which had vanished by the time police arrived to investigate, or the note, written in a hand, confirmed to match samples of Eliza's schoolwork on paper that carbon dating placed firmly in the 1970s. Rebecca never returned to the house on Marsh Street. She moved into an apartment closer to the high school and tried to forget what she had uncovered. But sometimes, on cold winter nights, she still dreams of that handprint pressed against frost as if someone were trying to reach through from the other side. And in her new apartment, she keeps nothing in the freezer that she doesn't need to, just in case. Crime 4, she was walking through a crowded parking lot when a man stopped, smiled, and said, "Tell Baxter he's a good boy." She had never seen him before. Baxter hadn't been outside that day. That night, she found a photo of her and Baxter taped to the mailbox. Melissa Kinney lived a quiet life in the suburban town of Oak Ridge, Vermont. At 32, she worked as a librarian at the local branch, a job that suited her introverted nature perfectly. She lived alone in a small blue house at the end of Maple Street, with only her golden retriever, Baxter, for company. This arrangement had suited her just fine for the last 5 years. Those who knew Melissa described her as kind but reserved. She kept to herself, preferring the company of books and her loyal companion to most human interactions. Her routine rarely varied: work at the library, walks with Baxter in the early evening, and quiet nights at home reading or watching documentaries. Neighbors would see her walking Baxter along the same route every day at 6:15 p.m., waving politely but seldom stopping to chat. October in Vermont meant earlier sunsets and a chill in the air. The trees around Oak Ridge had begun their annual transformation, painting the landscape in brilliant shades of red and gold. Melissa had always loved autumn, though the shorter days meant adjusting her walks with Baxter to catch the remaining daylight. On October 12th, Melissa had gone to the Oak Ridge shopping center after work. She needed to pick up some groceries and a prescription for her seasonal allergies. The parking lot was unusually busy for a Tuesday evening. As she walked from her car toward the entrance of Morrison's Pharmacy, a man approached her. He was average in every way, medium height, brown hair, maybe in his early 40s, the kind of person you'd pass 100 times and never remember. "Excuse me," he said with a friendly smile. "Tell Baxter he's a good boy." Melissa froze. The plastic shopping bag in her hand suddenly felt heavy. She'd never seen this man before, and Baxter hadn't been outside the house that day. She'd left him inside because of the morning rain. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" she managed to ask, her voice barely audible above the sound of shopping carts and car doors. The man's smile widened slightly. "Not yet," he said, then turned and walked away, disappearing between the parked cars. Melissa stood there for nearly a minute, trying to rationalize what had just happened. Perhaps he had mistaken her for someone else. Maybe he knew another Melissa with a dog named Baxter. The coincidence seemed unlikely, but she forced herself to dismiss it as she continued her errands. Later that evening, she pulled into her driveway, the encounter at the shopping center lingering in her mind. Baxter greeted her at the door as always, tail wagging enthusiastically. She went through her usual routine, feeding Baxter, making a simple dinner for herself, and settling in with a new mystery novel. But she couldn't focus on the words. Something about the man's smile kept intruding into her thoughts. At 9:30 p.m., Melissa realized she had forgotten to check her mail. Normally, she would have grabbed it when she first arrived home, but the strange encounter had disrupted her routine. She slipped on a cardigan and stepped outside into the cool night air. The streetlights cast long shadows across her small front yard as she approached the mailbox at the end of her driveway. When she opened the metal door, she found only a single flyer for a local pizza place. But as she closed the mailbox, something caught her eye. There was a small white envelope taped to the back of the mailbox, facing away from the street. Her name was written on it in neat, precise handwriting. With trembling fingers, Melissa peeled the envelope from the mailbox and opened it. Inside was a candid shot of her walking Baxter in the park near her house. It had been taken recently. She recognized the red sweater she had worn just 3 days ago. On the back of the photo, written in the same neat handwriting, were the words, "Baxter really is a good boy. I've been watching." Melissa's heart pounded as she rushed back to the house, locking the door behind her. She pulled all the curtains closed and sat on her couch, the photograph still in her hand. Baxter sensed her distress and rested his head on her knee. For the next 2 days, Melissa altered her routine. She called in sick to work, kept the curtains drawn, and only took Baxter out in the backyard, which was enclosed by a 6-foot fence. She jumped at every sound: the mail carrier, a car door, the neighbor's lawnmower. She considered calling the police, but hesitated. What would she tell them? That a stranger knew her dog's name, that someone had taken her picture in a public park. None of it was explicitly threatening, just deeply unsettling. On the 3rd day, Friday, Melissa's phone rang. The caller ID showed it was her sister, Kate, calling from Boston. "Mel, are you okay? I've been texting you for 2 days. Kate's concerned voice came through the line. Melissa hesitated, then decided to tell her sister everything. Kate listened without interrupting. "You need to call the police," Kate said firmly when Melissa finished. "This isn't normal, Mel, it's stalking." After hanging up, Melissa finally made the call to the local police department. Officer Daniel Haynes arrived 40 minutes later, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a notebook that he filled methodically as Melissa recounted the events. He examined the photograph and envelope carefully. "We'll increase patrols in your area," Officer Haynes assured her, "and I'd like to take this with me if that's okay. We might be able to get prints or other evidence from it." That night, despite the officer's reassurances, Melissa barely slept. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of wind in the trees outside seemed amplified. Baxter stayed close to her, sensing her anxiety. The weekend passed without incident. By Monday, Melissa had convinced herself to return to work, though she arranged with her supervisor to leave before dark. The library provided a sense of normalcy, surrounded by familiar books and regulars who came in for their weekly reading material. As she shelved books in the historical fiction section, a voice behind her said, "Excuse me, do you have any books on photography?" Melissa turned to find the man from the parking lot standing there, still wearing that same unsettling smile. Up close, she noticed his eyes were an unusual shade of gray, almost colorless. "I've been practicing my technique," he continued, his voice soft and measured. "Natural light versus artificial, capturing candid moments, you know how it is." Before Melissa could respond or call for help, he was gone again, disappearing between the tall shelves of books. She immediately called Officer Haynes, who arrived with another officer within minutes. They searched the library and the surrounding area, but found no trace of the man. That evening, Officer Haynes insisted on escorting Melissa home. As they pulled into her driveway, his radio crackled with a report of a break-in 3 blocks away. He seemed torn, but Melissa assured him she would be fine. She had Kate on the phone and would lock all doors and windows. Inside, Melissa went through her now familiar security routine. checking all entry points, drawing curtains, turning on extra lights. She called Kate as promised and kept the phone close as she prepared a quick dinner. Baxter, usually content to lie nearby as she cooked, suddenly stood alert, his ears perked forward. He walked to the kitchen door that led to the backyard and growled, something he rarely did. "What is it, boy?" Melissa whispered, fear rising in her throat. She approached the door cautiously and peered through the small window. The backyard appeared empty in the dim glow from the porch light. Bare tree branches swayed gently in the evening breeze. Nothing seemed out of place until she noticed that the gate to the fence was slightly ajar. Melissa's hand shook as she reached for her phone to call Officer Haynes again. As she dialed, the power in the house suddenly went out, plunging her into darkness. Baxter's growling intensified. In the silence that followed, she heard a soft click, the sound of the back door's lock being manipulated from the outside. The investigation that followed revealed a disturbing pattern. 3 other women in neighboring towns had reported similar experiences over the past year. A stranger who knew personal details about them, photographs left where only they would find them. None of the cases had escalated to physical harm, but all had left the women feeling violated and unsafe. Police eventually identified the man as Edward Mercer, a former professional photographer who had lost his job after being accused of inappropriate behavior toward female subjects. His apartment contained hundreds of photographs of dozens of women, all taken without their knowledge or consent. Most disturbing was the detailed information he had collected on each of them: routines, preferences, names of pets and family members, all meticulously documented in a series of notebooks. Yet despite the evidence found in his apartment, Edward Mercer himself was never located. The break-in 3 blocks from Melissa's home on that final night had been a diversion. By the time police realized this and returned to Melissa's house, they found only Baxter, sedated but unharmed, and Melissa's phone on the kitchen floor with the 911 call still connected. Melissa Kinney hasn't been seen since that October night. Her case remains open, one of several unsolved disappearances now linked to Edward Mercer. Some investigators believe he crossed state lines with his victims, while others suggest he may have had an accomplice who helped him evade capture. Every few months, Kate receives an unmarked envelope containing a Polaroid photograph of her sister alive, but unsmiling, holding that day's newspaper. No demands have ever been made, no explanation given, just proof of life delivered like a taunt to those still searching. In Oak Ridge, residents now lock their doors at night. They vary their routines and watch strangers with suspicion. Baxter lives with Kate now in Boston, far from Vermont. Sometimes, when the mail arrives, he still runs to the door and waits, tail wagging hopefully, for the owner who never returns. And somewhere, perhaps not far away, a man with colorless eyes continues to watch, to learn the names of pets, to practice his technique, capturing moments that were never his to take. Crime 5, when she rearranged her office, she noticed the wall sounded different. Behind it, she found a narrow chamber with no entrance, just a wooden chair, duct tape, and a Polaroid of someone tied to it. The person in the photo wore her sweatshirt. Olivia Carson had always been methodical about her spaces. As a 34-year-old editor for a small publishing house in Oak Ridge, Connecticut, she valued organization and routine. Her home office, located in the Victorian house she had purchased 3 years ago, was her sanctuary. The previous owners, an elderly couple named the Merricks, had maintained the property well, though they had mentioned that the house had undergone several renovations over its 90-year history. That Sunday in October began like any other. The maple trees outside Olivia's window were shedding their amber leaves, and she had decided it was time for a change. She wanted to rearrange her office to capture more natural light during the shorter winter days ahead. The large oak bookshelf that dominated the north wall would need to be moved. After emptying the shelves of their contents, manuscripts, reference books, and family photographs, Olivia pushed against the heavy furniture. As it inched away from the wall, she noticed something unusual. The dull thud she expected from a solid wall was replaced by a hollow echo when she knocked against it. "That's odd," she whispered to herself, running her fingers along the pale blue wallpaper. There was a slight seam, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. Olivia retrieved a letter opener from her desk and carefully worked it into the crease. The wallpaper gave way, revealing drywall that appeared newer than what would be expected in a house of this age. Something compelled her to continue. Perhaps it was the editor in her, always searching for hidden narratives or simply human curiosity. She found a hammer and made a small hole in the wall. When she peered through with a flashlight, her breath caught in her throat. There was space behind the wall, a narrow chamber no more than 3 feet wide that seemed to extend the length of the room. 2 hours later, Olivia had created an opening large enough to step through. The air inside was stale, undisturbed for what must have been years. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a scene that made her stomach turn. The chamber contained only 3 items: a wooden chair bolted to the floor, several strips of discolored duct tape hanging from its arms and legs, and a Polaroid photograph lying face down on the dusty floor. With trembling fingers, Olivia picked up the photograph. When she turned it over, the blood drained from her face. The image showed a young woman bound to the chair with duct tape across her mouth. The woman's eyes were wide with terror, pleading with whoever held the camera. But what caused Olivia to drop the photo was the maroon University of Massachusetts sweatshirt the woman wore, identical to the one hanging in Olivia's closet, her alma mater. "This isn't possible," she whispered, backing away until she hit the wall of her office. Detective James Harmon had seen many disturbing things during his 15 years with the Oak Ridge Police Department, but the hidden room in Olivia Carson's house presented unique questions. He studied the Polaroid carefully, noting the timestamp in the corner, June 12, 1998, nearly 27 years ago. "And you say you've only owned this house for 3 years?" he asked, watching Olivia's face carefully. "Yes, I bought it from the Merricks. They lived here for almost 40 years before moving to Florida." Harmon nodded, making notes. "And this sweatshirt, you're certain it's the same as yours?" "It looks identical, size, color, even the small tear near the left cuff." Olivia hugged herself. "But that's impossible. I wasn't even living in Connecticut in 1998. I was 16, living with my parents in Pennsylvania." The detective called in the forensics team, who spent hours documenting the hidden room. They found microscopic blood traces on the chair that had been invisible to the naked eye. More disturbing were the scratch marks on the inside wall. Someone had tried to claw their way out. "We need to find the Merricks," Harmon told his partner later that evening, "and we need to identify the woman in this photograph." The Merricks were located at their retirement community in Sarasota. Raymond Merrick sounded genuinely shocked when Harmon described what they'd found. "We had no idea," the 83-year-old insisted. "That part of the house underwent renovation in the late 90s, but we contracted the work out to Landry Construction. Edward Landry handled everything. We rarely even went into that room during the months they were working." Edward Landry had died of a heart attack in 2010, but his business records were still accessible. The project at the Merrick House had employed 4 workers, Landry himself, his son Philip, and 2 men named Curtis Dawson and Martin Webb. Philip Landry still lived in Oak Ridge, running what remained of his father's business. When questioned, he appeared nervous but cooperative. I remember that job. Old Victorian houses always have strange spaces. Sometimes previous renovations create dead areas between walls. He paused. But I don't remember anyone building a room like you're describing. The forensics team managed to pull partial fingerprints from the back of the Polaroid. They matched those of Curtis Dawson, who had been arrested twice for stalking in the early 2000s but never convicted. Dawson had left Connecticut years ago, his current whereabouts unknown. Meanwhile, Olivia couldn't sleep. The image of the woman in her sweatshirt haunted her. She began researching missing persons cases from 1998, focusing on female college students from UMass. 3 weeks into her investigation, she found something. Jennifer Reese, 20, had disappeared in May 1998. She had been last seen leaving a friend's apartment in Amherst, Massachusetts. In her last known photograph, she wore a maroon UMass sweatshirt. Olivia stared at the missing woman's face for a long time. There was something familiar about her features, something that made Olivia's hands shake as she reached for the phone to call Detective Harmon. A DNA comparison confirmed what Olivia had begun to suspect. Jennifer Reese was her first cousin, a connection Olivia had never known about. Jennifer's mother, Catherine, had been estranged from Olivia's father since before Olivia was born. "I never even knew my father had a sister," Olivia told Harmon, her voice hollow with shock. "My father never spoke about his family. He always changed the subject when I asked." Olivia's father, Richard Carson, had died 5 years earlier. She found herself looking at his photographs differently now, wondering what secrets he had carried to his grave. The investigation uncovered an unsettling connection. Curtis Dawson had grown up in the same Pennsylvania town as Richard Carson. Old high school yearbooks showed them together on the baseball team, and in 1997, Dawson had briefly worked as a maintenance man at UMass Amherst. "We believe Dawson recognized Jennifer as Richard's niece," Harmon explained to Olivia. "For whatever reason, maybe an old grudge, maybe something more twisted, he targeted her. Then he deliberately incorporated this hidden room into the renovation at the Merrick's house." "But why would the sweatshirt end up in my possession years later?" Olivia asked. "That's what troubles me," Harmon admitted. "It suggests a continuation of whatever began in 1998. The case took another turn when Martin Webb, the 4th member of the renovation crew, was located in Vermont. Initially reluctant to talk, he eventually admitted that he had suspected something was wrong with the renovation. "Dawson and Philip would work late after Edward and I left. Once I came back for my wallet and saw them unloading something heavy wrapped in plastic from Philip's truck. They didn't see me, and I didn't ask questions. Construction pays cash, you know. You don't rock the boat." Curtis Dawson was eventually located in Oregon, living under an assumed name. When confronted with the evidence, he maintained his innocence but refused to explain the fingerprints or his connection to Philip Landry, who had also stopped cooperating with the investigation. The most disturbing development came 3 months into the investigation. Forensic analysis of the blood traces found in the hidden room revealed DNA that matched not only Jennifer Reese, but also contained partial matches to Olivia herself. "How is this possible?" Olivia asked, her voice barely audible when Harmon delivered this news. "We're not sure yet," he replied carefully, "but we're looking into the possibility that Jennifer may have been pregnant when she disappeared." To this day, the full truth of what happened in that hidden room remains elusive. Curtis Dawson died of a drug overdose while awaiting trial, taking many answers with him. Philip Landry received a reduced sentence for cooperation, though his account contained significant gaps that he claimed were due to heavy drug use during that period. Jennifer Reese's remains have never been found. The maroon sweatshirt in Olivia's closet, identical to the one in the Polaroid, contained no DNA evidence linking it directly to Jennifer, leaving open the question of whether it was the same garment or a deliberate replica left for Olivia to find. Olivia no longer lives in the Victorian house. The wall has been properly sealed, the room documented and then closed off. Sometimes she wonders about the cousin she never knew and the strange, twisted path that led her to that hidden room. And sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, she wonders if someone has been watching her all along, waiting for her to find what was hidden behind the wall. Crime 6, it arrived by mail, no stamp. At first it read like a generic threat until the last paragraph repeated her exact inner monologue from the night before. Same words, same punctuation. The last line read, "Now you believe me." Alina Myers had always found comfort in routine. At 42, she lived alone in a modest two-bedroom house on Cypress Lane in the small town of Millbrook, Connecticut. Her neighbors described her as kind but reserved, the type who would wave from her porch but rarely engaged in lengthy conversations. A high school English teacher for over 15 years, Alina was respected by colleagues and students alike for her thoughtful demeanor and dedication to literature. Every evening followed the same pattern: home by 4:30, a cup of chamomile tea while grading papers, dinner at 6:00, then reading until bedtime at 10:00. Alina's life was predictable, structured, safe, until February 17th, 2023, when the letter appeared. That morning began like any other Thursday. The winter air felt particularly sharp as Alina collected her mail. Bills, a catalog, a newsletter from the local library, and a plain white envelope with no return address. No stamp either, which she only noticed later. It had been hand-delivered. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly in thirds. The message was typed in a standard font, nothing distinctive. "You think you're safe behind your locked doors and drawn curtains. You believe your routine protects you, but I've been watching. I know when you sleep, when you eat, when you grade those papers with your red pen. I know you, and soon everyone will know what you've done." Alina might have dismissed it as a cruel prank, perhaps from a disgruntled student unhappy with a grade. But then she read the final paragraph. "Last night you stood at your bedroom window for 17 minutes. You watched the Hendersons' house across the street and thought, if they only knew how fragile their happiness is. One revelation could shatter everything. Sometimes I think I should be the one to tell them, but I'm too much of a coward. Now you believe me." The mug of coffee slipped from Alina's hand, shattering against the kitchen tile. Those had been her exact thoughts, word for word, as she'd stared out her window the previous night. No one could have known that. No one could have heard her. She hadn't spoken aloud. Detective Marcus Rivera received the call at 9:17 a.m. By the time he arrived at Alina's house, she had cleaned up the broken mug but remained visibly shaken. Marcus had served on Millbrook's small police force for 12 years, handling primarily minor incidents, domestic disputes, teenage vandalism, the occasional break-in. This was different. "You're certain these were your exact thoughts?" he asked, examining the letter through latex gloves. "Word for word," Alina whispered. "I've never told anyone about the Hendersons, about what I know." Detective Rivera raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly do you know about the Hendersons?" Alina hesitated, her eyes drifting toward the window. "That's not relevant to this threat." The detective made a note in his small leather-bound notebook. "Everything might be relevant, Ms. Myers. Someone is claiming to know your thoughts. That's either impossible or..." "Or what?" Alina pressed. "Or someone is much closer to you than we realize." The investigation began quietly. Detective Rivera installed a basic security system in Alina's home, motion-activated cameras covering the entrances and property perimeter. He advised her to vary her routine, to be aware of anyone showing unusual interest in her. Meanwhile, he started looking into Alina's circle, colleagues, students, neighbors. The Hendersons, Tom and Diane, lived directly across from Alina with their teenage son, Caleb. Tom worked in insurance. Diane was a nurse at the local hospital. They had moved to Millbrook 8 years ago. By all accounts, they were a normal, happy family. But when Rivera interviewed them, he noticed Diane's nervous glances, the way she twisted her wedding ring continuously. 3 days after the first letter, a second one arrived. Again, no stamp. Again, hand-delivered despite the cameras, which had recorded nothing unusual. "You went to the police, predictable. Detective Rivera seems thorough, but he's looking in all the wrong places. You should tell him about July 15, 2015, about what you saw through your bedroom window that night, about what you've been keeping secret for the Hendersons all these years. Time is running out, Alina." July 15, 2015. Alina remembered that night vividly. It had been unusually hot, and she had been unable to sleep. Standing at her window, seeking some relief from the still air, she had witnessed something across the street, something that had haunted her ever since. When Rivera questioned her about the date, Alina finally revealed her secret. On that night, she had seen Tom Henderson return home at 2:37 a.m., his clothes disheveled, his hands. She was almost certain his hands had been covered in something dark. The next morning, the local news reported that a young woman had been found beaten to death in Parkside Woods, less than a mile from their neighborhood. "And you never reported this?" Rivera asked, his voice carefully neutral. "I wasn't sure," Alina said softly. "It was dark. It could have been mud or oil from his car. And Tom had always been so kind. I told myself I was imagining things. Eventually, they arrested someone else for the murder, that drifter who had been staying at the homeless shelter." "Raymond Jenks," Rivera nodded. "He's serving a life sentence. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling." "Exactly," Alina continued. "So I convinced myself I was wrong. But sometimes when I see Tom playing catch with his son or helping Diane with groceries, I wonder." The letters continued, one every few days. Each contained details only Alina could know, private thoughts, small actions performed when she believed herself alone. The security cameras never captured a delivery. The letters had no fingerprints except Alina's, no DNA except hers. It was as if they materialized from thin air. Meanwhile, Detective Rivera quietly reopened the investigation into the 2015 murder. The victim, Andrea Collins, had been 23, a graduate student at the state university. The case against Raymond Jenks had seemed solid, his fingerprints on a beer can near the scene, a witness who placed him in the area, his own contradictory statements about his whereabouts. But there had always been gaps, questions that remained unanswered. The fifth letter arrived on March 3rd. Alina, still keeping secrets from the detective. You haven't told him everything. You haven't told him that Diane Henderson knows, that you've seen her watching you watching them, that the night after the murder you saw her burning something in their backyard fire pit. You haven't told him that you've been protecting them because of your own guilt, because you could have saved Andrea Collins, but you chose silence instead, just like you've always done. That night Alina couldn't sleep. The weight of 8 years of silence pressed down on her chest like a physical presence. At 2:13 a.m., she saw lights on in the Hendersons' house, shadows moving urgently behind curtains. By morning, their driveway was empty. They had vanished. The investigation accelerated. The Hendersons' home revealed careful cleaning, too careful. Luminol showed traces of blood in the garage that someone had attempted to remove years earlier. Tom Henderson's DNA was found preserved on evidence from Andrea Collins' case that had never been properly tested. Raymond Jenks was released from prison after serving 8 years for a crime he didn't commit. But the letters didn't stop. Did you think this was about justice for Andrea Collins? This was never about her. This is about you, Alina, about the power of secrets, about the weight of knowing and choosing silence. I'm not finished with you yet. Detectives tracked the Hendersons to a cabin in rural Vermont, registered under a different name. Tom confessed to Andrea's murder, a chance encounter, an argument that escalated, a momentary loss of control that destroyed multiple lives. Diane admitted to helping cover up the crime. Both were arrested. Case closed, or so it seemed. 2 days after the arrests, the final letter arrived. Congratulations, Alina. Justice served at last. But while everyone focuses on the Hendersons, no one is asking the important question, how did I know your thoughts? How did I know your secrets? The answer has been in front of you all along. Look in the mirror, Alina. I've always been here watching, waiting. The voice you think is your conscience, it's me. It's always been me, and I'll never leave you. Alina Myers disappeared 3 days later. Her car was found parked at Riverpoint Cliffs, a notorious suicide location 20 miles outside of Millbrook. A note in her handwriting was discovered on the passenger seat. The voice won't stop. I can't tell what thoughts are mine anymore. Her body was never recovered. The case remains officially open but inactive. Detective Rivera still drives by the empty house on Cypress Lane sometimes. He wonders about the letters, how they were delivered, how they contained Alina's private thoughts. The official explanation suggests an elaborate gaslighting campaign, perhaps involving surveillance devices placed by the Hendersons to monitor Alina to keep their secret safe. But Rivera has his doubts. In his desk drawer, he keeps one final piece of evidence never entered into the official record, a letter that arrived at his home 1 week after Alina's disappearance. No stamp, no fingerprints except his own. It reads simply, "Some questions are better left unanswered. Trust me on this one, Detective E." Crime 7, her cousin said the old house had a second level, but the staircase ended in a wall. When she pushed against it, part of it gave way, revealing a hidden room covered in mirrors and a single mattress soaked in something dark. Emma Pierce never considered herself particularly curious by nature. A 32-year-old accountant from Mauryville, Pennsylvania, she led what most would call an ordinary life. She had a small circle of friends, a cat named Winston, and a job that paid the bills. But when her elderly aunt died and left Emma her old Victorian house in the quiet town of Lakeford, Connecticut, Emma found herself drawn into a mystery that would change her forever. The house had been in the family for generations. Built in 1894, it had the characteristic high ceilings and ornate woodwork of its era, but had fallen into disrepair over the last decade as her aunt's health declined. Emma had visited only once as a child, and remembered little about it except for the way sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows in the front hallway, casting colorful patterns across the worn hardwood floors. "The house has good bones," the local realtor told her when Emma arrived to assess the property in late October 2018. "Your aunt kept to herself these past few years. Not many people have been inside recently." Emma had planned to clean the place up and sell it. She had no intention of leaving her life in Pennsylvania, but something about the house felt familiar, comforting, despite its creaking floors and musty smell. She decided to stay for a week to sort through her aunt's belongings before listing the property. On her second day there, Emma's cousin Michael drove up from New York to help. They hadn't seen each other in years, but fell easily into conversation as they sorted through old photo albums and boxes of trinkets in the living room. "Did you check out the upstairs yet?" Michael asked casually over sandwiches during their lunch break. Emma looked at him strangely. "There isn't an upstairs, it's a single-story house." Michael shook his head. "No, I remember playing up there as a kid. There's definitely a second floor." They argued good-naturedly until Michael led her to what Emma had assumed was a closet door in the hallway. When he opened it, a narrow staircase was revealed, winding upward. "See, I told you," Michael said triumphantly. Emma stared at the stairs in confusion. How had she missed this? She followed Michael up the creaking steps, dust motes dancing in the beam of light from his phone flashlight. But at the top, where there should have been a hallway or room, there was only a wall. "That's strange," Michael frowned, running his hand along the surface. "I swear there used to be rooms up here." Emma pressed her palm against the wall. It felt different from the plaster walls elsewhere in the house, less solid somehow. When she pushed harder, a section gave way with a soft click, revealing darkness beyond. "What the hell?" Michael whispered. They stood frozen for a moment before Emma reached for her own phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam illuminated a space about 12 feet square. The walls were covered entirely in mirrors, old spotted mirrors that reflected their shocked faces back at them from every angle. In the center of the room sat a single mattress with no frame, its surface stained with something dark and crusted. "We need to call the police," Emma said quietly, her voice steady despite the churning in her stomach. The Lakeford Police Department wasn't accustomed to major crimes. The town of 8,000 had reported only 3 break-ins and no violent incidents in the previous year. When Detective Simon Reeves arrived at the house 40 minutes later, he brought with him a young officer named Tanya Martinez and a forensic technician. "Please don't touch anything else," Detective Reeves instructed Emma and Michael as they waited downstairs. He was a tall man with prematurely gray hair and eyes that seemed to notice everything. "Tell me again how you found this room." Emma explained about the hidden staircase and the wall that wasn't really a wall. She watched as the detective's expression shifted subtly from skepticism to concern. "And you never knew this was here? Your aunt never mentioned it?" he asked. "No, never. I barely knew this house. I only visited once when I was maybe 7 years old." "What about you?" Reeves turned to Michael. "I came here more often as a kid, but I only remember playing upstairs in normal bedrooms. Nothing like that." The forensic technician emerged from the staircase, her face grim. "You're going to want to see this, Simon," she said quietly. For the next several hours, Emma and Michael sat in the kitchen as police officers came and went. The house that had felt merely old and neglected that morning now seemed to hold secrets in every shadow. Emma found herself jumping at small noises, the refrigerator cycling on, a branch scraping against a window. Detective Reeves finally joined them again as evening approached. "The substance on the mattress is blood," he said without preamble. "A significant amount, and from preliminary testing, it appears to be from multiple sources. We also found hair samples and fibers that suggest the room has been used relatively recently." "Recently," Emma repeated, "but my aunt lived alone. She was 93 years old." "When was the last time anyone checked on her in person?" Reeves asked. Emma looked at Michael. "I called her every week," she said slowly, "but I haven't visited in years. She always said she was fine, that a neighbor helped with groceries." "Which neighbor?" Reeves pressed. "I don't know, she just said the neighbor boy. I assumed it was a teenager earning pocket money." The investigation revealed that Emma's aunt, Eleanor Pierce, had indeed been receiving help from a neighbor, Raymond Gaines, who lived 3 houses down. Gaines was 42, divorced, and worked nights as a security guard at the local hospital. He had no criminal record and was described by other neighbors as quiet and helpful. But when police searched Gaines' home, they found a hidden compartment in his basement containing women's clothing, jewelry, and driver's licenses from 3 different states. None belonged to Eleanor Pierce. "We believe your aunt may have discovered something about Gaines," Detective Reeves told Emma a week later. "The mirrors in that room were installed sometime in the last 5 years, according to the adhesive used. The wall was constructed more recently, maybe just months ago." "You think she was protecting him?" Emma asked, horrified. "Or too frightened to come forward. We're looking into missing persons cases in the area, but so far, we haven't identified any victims." 2 days later, Raymond Gaines was brought in for questioning. He denied any knowledge of the hidden room, claiming he had never been upstairs in Eleanor's house. But when confronted with evidence that his fingerprints had been found on the back of one of the mirrors, his demeanor changed. "She was lonely," he said, his voice flat. "I was just being kind to an old woman. Is that a crime?" "The blood is a crime," Reeves countered. "The hidden room is suspicious. The collection of women's belongings in your basement is deeply concerning." Gaines refused to speak further without a lawyer present. Meanwhile, Emma found herself unable to leave Lakeford. The house she had intended to sell quickly now represented a mystery she couldn't walk away from. She took a leave of absence from her job and moved into a small rental cottage near the town center, unwilling to sleep in her aunt's house, but equally unwilling to return to Pennsylvania while questions remained. In the weeks that followed, forensic investigators identified blood from at least 4 individuals on the mattress and surrounding areas. One match was made to a woman named Denise Calvert, who had disappeared from a town 20 miles away in 2016. Her body was later found buried behind a storage facility where Gaines had once worked. But the other blood samples remained unidentified. Despite extensive searching of both properties and surrounding areas, no additional remains were discovered. "He's not talking," Detective Reeves told Emma over coffee one morning in December. "The evidence is circumstantial. Without bodies or witnesses, the prosecution is concerned about making a solid case." "What about my aunt? Do you think she knew what was happening in her own house?" Reeves hesitated. "Your aunt's medical records show early-stage dementia diagnosed about 6 years ago. It's possible she was confused or that Gaines manipulated her. We found receipts showing he had been buying her groceries for at least 4 years. As winter settled over Lakeford, the case against Raymond Gaines progressed slowly. Emma found herself studying old photos of her aunt, looking for signs she might have missed during their weekly phone calls. Had Aliner's voice trembled when she mentioned the neighbor boy? Had there been fear beneath her insistence that everything was fine? In January, while clearing out a garden shed on the property, Emma discovered a small tin box buried beneath a loose floorboard. Inside was a journal written in her aunt's shaky handwriting. The entries were sporadic and sometimes confused, but one passage stood out with chilling clarity. Raymond brought tea again today. He insists on going upstairs afterward to check on things. I told him there's nothing up there anymore, but he just smiles. Last night I heard footsteps above my bedroom. I know I'm not imagining it. Should I call Emma? Would she even believe me? The journal was submitted as evidence, but Gaines' defense attorney argued successfully that Alina Pierce's documented cognitive decline made her an unreliable witness, even posthumously. In March 2019, Raymond Gaines accepted a plea deal for the murder of Denise Calvert. He was sentenced to 25 years to life. The other blood evidence remained unexplained, the other potential victims unnamed. Emma finally sold the house in May, disclosing its history to the young couple who purchased it at a steep discount. They planned to renovate extensively, starting with demolishing the hidden room and its wall of mirrors. "Will you stay for the renovation?" Detective Reeves asked Emma when they met one last time before her departure. "There might be more evidence when they open up those walls." Emma shook her head. "I've learned more than I ever wanted to about this house, about my aunt, about the darkness people can hide." The hidden room with its mirrors and blood-stained mattress had revealed something to Emma about the fragility of normal life, how easily the ordinary can conceal the unthinkable, how a staircase that seemed to go nowhere could lead to terrible truths. As she drove away from Lakeford, Emma couldn't help but wonder about the women whose blood had been found but whose names remained unknown, about what other secrets might be hidden behind walls in ordinary houses on quiet streets, about whether Raymond Gaines would ever reveal the full extent of what had happened in that mirrored room. She would never know, and perhaps that was the most disturbing truth of all. Crime 8, she answered the call out of habit, static, then a whisper, "Pumpkin." Only one person had ever called her that. They died when she was 12. The voice continued, "It's not over, look under the porch." Rachel Winters had always been a creature of routine. At 42, she lived alone in the same 2-story colonial house in Millfield, Connecticut, where she had spent most of her childhood. Her days followed a predictable pattern: coffee at 6, work at the local library by 8, dinner at 6:30, and bed by 10. Weekends were for gardening and occasional visits from her sister who lived 2 towns over. Those who knew Rachel described her as reserved but kind, the type of person who remembered birthdays and sent handwritten thank you notes. She kept her chestnut hair in the same shoulder-length cut she'd worn since college and dressed in muted colors that matched her quiet demeanor. What few people knew about Rachel was how deeply her childhood had marked her. When she was 12, her beloved grandmother Elaine had died suddenly of a stroke. Elaine was the only one who ever called Rachel Pumpkin, a nickname that began when Rachel, at age 4, refused to remove a Halloween costume for nearly a week. The nickname became their special connection, a small token of the unconditional love her grandmother had provided while Rachel's parents worked long hours. After Elaine's death, Rachel's childhood home had felt emptier, colder somehow. Her parents sold the house when Rachel was in college, but 15 years ago, when the property unexpectedly came back on the market, Rachel purchased it immediately, despite its need for significant repairs. She had told her sister it felt like closing a circle. The house stood on Maple Street, with a wraparound porch and a small garden that bloomed reliably each spring. Thursday, October 17th, began like any other autumn day. The maple trees lining the street had turned crimson and gold. Rachel left for work precisely at 7:45 a.m., locking her front door with the same 2 turns of the key she always used. She spent the day cataloging new arrivals at the library, had lunch with a colleague, and returned home at 5:15 p.m. The call came at 8:43 p.m. Rachel had just settled on her couch with a cup of chamomile tea and the novel she'd been reading. Her cell phone rang from an unknown number with a local area code. She answered reflexively. "Hello." The line crackled with static, then a whisper so soft she almost missed it. "Pumpkin." Rachel's teacup slipped from her fingers, spilling across the hardwood floor. The voice, raspy yet unmistakable, sounded exactly like her grandmother's. "Who is this?" Her voice trembled. Static again then. "It's not over. Look under the porch." The line went dead. For several minutes, Rachel sat frozen, tea soaking into the rug beneath her feet. Her mind raced through possibilities. A cruel prank, a wrong number with an eerie coincidence, her own imagination. But the voice had been so distinct, so familiar. No one alive knew about that nickname. Rachel called her sister immediately. "Did you ever tell anyone about what Grandma Elaine used to call me?" she asked without preamble. "What? No, why would I?" her sister responded, confused. Rachel hung up without explaining. She paced her living room until midnight, checking the locks repeatedly, peering through windows at the darkened street. Eventually, exhaustion overcame fear, and she fell into a restless sleep on the couch. Morning brought clarity and rational thought. Rachel convinced herself the call had been a wrong number, her mind filling in details that weren't really there. She went to work, though colleagues noticed she seemed distracted, dropping books and startling at small noises. That evening, she arrived home to find her front door unlocked. Rachel was certain she had locked it. The 2 habitual turns of the key were ingrained in her muscle memory. She called the police, who arrived 20 minutes later. Officer Perez and his partner did a thorough sweep of the house but found nothing missing, no signs of forced entry. "Maybe you were in a hurry this morning," Officer Perez suggested kindly. "Happens to everyone sometimes." Rachel nodded, but she knew better. 23 years at the library had made her methodical to a fault. After the officers left, Rachel found herself staring at the porch. The wooden structure wrapped around half the house, with lattice skirting concealing the space underneath. "Look under the porch." The words echoed in her mind. She retrieved a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and stepped outside. The October air had turned chilly as night fell. Rachel knelt by the lattice panel nearest the steps, where a small access door was built into the decorative woodwork. She had never opened it, had never had reason to. The panel swung open with a groan of rusty hinges. Rachel shined her flashlight into the darkness. At first she saw nothing but dirt, a few garden tools and scattered leaves that had blown in through the gaps. Then the beam of light caught something unnatural, a corner of plastic protruding from the soil. Rachel reached in, her heart pounding against her ribs, and pulled. A plastic bag emerged, caked with dirt. Inside was a small metal box, the kind used for storing cash or important documents. With shaking hands, Rachel carried the box to her kitchen table. The lock had long since rusted away, and the lid opened with gentle pressure. Inside lay a faded notebook bound in red leather, a tarnished locket, and a stack of yellowed newspaper clippings. The notebook belonged to her grandmother, filled with her distinctive, flowing handwriting. But as Rachel began to read, confusion gave way to disbelief. The journal detailed events her grandmother could not possibly have witnessed because they occurred after her death. The entries described a man named Victor Carnes who had moved to Millfield in 1998, 3 years after Elaine had passed away. According to the journal, Carnes had purchased the house directly across from Rachel's current home. Rachel walked to her front window and stared at the house opposite hers. It had been occupied by the Durnings, a retired couple, for as long as she had lived there. Before them, she couldn't recall who had owned it. The final newspaper clipping, dated November 2000, reported the disappearance of 2 young women from neighboring towns. Their names weren't familiar to Rachel, but a chill ran down her spine as she read the description of the suspect. Male, middle-aged, driving a dark blue sedan. The last page of the journal contained a single sentence. He buried something else under his porch at 42 Maple. Rachel's eyes darted back to the window. The house across the street was 42 Maple Street. Her house was 45. She called Officer Perez directly, his card still on her counter from earlier. To his credit, he listened patiently as she explained about the call, the box, and her grandmother's impossible journal. When she finished, there was a long pause. "Ms. Winters," he finally said, "I understand this is distressing, but that house has been thoroughly renovated twice since 2000. The Durnings had the entire foundation redone in 2010. If there was ever anything there, it would have been found. But the journal could have been written by anyone," he finished gently, "and placed there recently." After hanging up, Rachel spent the night researching. The town newspaper archives confirmed that a Victor Carnes had indeed lived at 42 Maple from 1997 to 2001, when he abruptly moved away. The 2 women mentioned in the clipping had never been found. The next morning, Rachel called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years. She sat by her window, watching the Durnings' house. Mrs. Durning left at 9, as she did every Friday for her standing hair appointment. Mr. Durning remained inside. At 10:30, Rachel's phone rang again. Unknown number. "Hello," she answered, her voice barely audible. "The basement wall," the voice whispered, "behind the shelves." This time, Rachel recorded the call. She played it back immediately, but heard only static where the voice had been. The recording showed a call of 12 seconds, though Rachel was certain it had lasted longer. That afternoon, she visited the county records office. The clerk, an old acquaintance, helped her locate the building plans for 42 Maple Street. The renovations Officer Perez mentioned had indeed been extensive, but had focused on the main floor and foundation periphery. "Were there any unusual findings during the renovation?" Rachel asked. The clerk shook her head. "Not that I recall." As Rachel left the records office, she noticed a familiar dark blue sedan parked across the street. Her breath caught in her throat. No one was inside, but on the passenger seat lay a red leather notebook identical to the one she'd found. By evening, Rachel had convinced herself to approach the Durnings directly. She crossed the street at dusk, a plate of cookies providing a flimsy pretext for her visit. Mr. Durning answered, his usual friendly smile in place. "Rachel, what a nice surprise." "I baked too many," she explained, offering the plate. "I was also wondering. This might sound strange, but did you ever notice anything unusual when you renovated the basement?" His smile faltered slightly. "Can't say we did. Why do you ask?" "Just curious about the history of these old houses," she replied. Mr. Durning studied her face for a moment too long. "Well, thank you for the cookies. Margaret will be sorry she missed you." That night Rachel couldn't sleep. The journal, the calls, the sedan, it all seemed connected by invisible threads she couldn't quite grasp. At 2:17 a.m., headlights swept across her bedroom ceiling as a car pulled into the Durnings' driveway. Rachel watched from her window as Mrs. Durning emerged, her silhouette unmistakable in the moonlight. She was carrying what looked like a shovel. The following day, Rachel received an envelope in her mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a single black and white photograph showing her grandmother's backyard as it had looked in the 1990s. In the background, barely noticeable, was a man watching from the edge of the property. His face was blurred, but Rachel felt a jolt of recognition she couldn't explain. She turned the photo over. Written in handwriting that matched her grandmother's journal was a single line: "He watched you when you were young." Something clicked in Rachel's memory, a childhood feeling of being observed, of eyes following her movements as she played in the yard. She had attributed it to childish imagination. Rachel finally went to the police station in person, bringing everything: the journal, the photo, recordings of the silent phone calls. Detective Mercer, a veteran officer, listened more intently than Officer Perez had. "The Durnings moved here in 2008, he confirmed after checking their database. "Before that, the house was vacant for almost 2 years. And yes, Victor Carnes did live there until 2001. He paused. "There was an investigation into his possible connection with those missing women, but nothing conclusive was found." "And my grandmother's journal, how could she have written about events after her death?" Detective Mercer had no answer for that. 3 days later, Mrs. Durning fell down her basement stairs and broke her hip. While she was in the hospital, Mr. Durning suffered a fatal heart attack at home. The house at 42 Maple Street stood empty once again. Rachel watched as police cars came and went, processing what was deemed a tragic accident. From her window, she noticed Detective Mercer lingering in the Durnings' basement longer than the others. When he emerged, his face was ashen. That evening, he knocked on Rachel's door. "We found something," he said quietly, "behind a false wall in the basement, exactly where the shelves used to be." Human forensic teams worked through the night. By morning, news vans had gathered on Maple Street. The remains of 3 women had been discovered in the basement of 42 Maple Street, concealed within the walls. Preliminary findings suggested they had been there for over 20 years. Rachel's phone rang one final time 2 weeks later. She answered without speaking. "Now it's over, pumpkin," her grandmother's voice whispered. "I couldn't leave until they were found." Rachel never received another call. The case of the Maple Street victims became national news, though the mystery of how they were finally discovered was often overlooked. Victor Carnes was eventually located in Arizona, where he had been living under an assumed name. DNA evidence connected him to the crimes. Rachel still lives in her childhood home. She keeps her grandmother's journal locked in a drawer. Crime 9, it was tucked behind a false panel in the closet. Leather-bound, weathered, most pages were blank, but the last few were filled with frantic writing in red ink, names, locations, and one chilling phrase repeated dozens of times: I followed her home. Claire Bennett had lived in the modest two-bedroom ranch house on Sycamore Lane for nearly 40 years. The 73-year-old retired librarian was known throughout the small town of Millfield, Connecticut, for her meticulous garden and her twice-weekly volunteer shifts at the local animal shelter. Neighbors described her as quiet but friendly, always ready with a gentle smile or a homemade pie for new residents. She had never married, and her closest living relative was a niece who lived 3 states away. When Claire didn't show up for her Tuesday shift at the animal shelter, her fellow volunteer Margaret Whitman thought little of it. Perhaps Claire had caught that cold that had been going around, but when Claire missed her Thursday shift as well and wasn't answering her phone, Margaret drove to the little house on Sycamore Lane. Claire's silver Honda Civic sat in the driveway, exactly where it always was. The morning newspaper remained rolled up in its plastic sleeve by the front door, alongside 2 others. The blinds were drawn. Margaret's knocks went unanswered. The faint smell of something unpleasant hung in the late summer air. Margaret called the police, her voice shaking slightly as she explained her concerns to the dispatcher. Officer Keith Daniels and his partner arrived within 15 minutes. They performed a standard wellness check, circling the property before determining they had reasonable cause to enter. The back door was unlocked, unusual for Claire, who was known to be cautious about home security ever since a series of break-ins had rattled the neighborhood some years earlier. Inside, the house was still and silent except for the soft ticking of an antique wall clock in the living room. Everything appeared undisturbed, mail neatly stacked on the counter, a half-finished cup of tea on the coffee table, reading glasses folded beside an open book. There were no signs of struggle or forced entry. They found Claire in her bedroom, lying peacefully in her bed as if she had simply fallen asleep. The medical examiner would later determine she had been dead for approximately 4 days. Natural causes, initially suspected. It should have ended there, an elderly woman passing away in her sleep, a sad but common occurrence. But something about the scene bothered Officer Daniels. The house was too perfect, too undisturbed. Claire's evening routine items were all laid out as if she'd been preparing for bed. Her medication, a glass of water, her journal on the nightstand. And yet she was still fully dressed in her day clothes, complete with shoes. People don't typically put on shoes to go to bed. The investigation might have remained casual if not for what they found during the standard cataloging of personal effects. As Detective Laurel Fisher moved methodically through Claire's closet, her trained fingers detected a slight gap in the wood paneling. Behind it was a hidden compartment containing only a single item, an old leather-bound journal that didn't match the cheerful floral diary on Claire's nightstand. Most of its pages were blank, but the last 7 pages contained writing in what appeared to be red ink. Names, addresses, times, dates, brief observations about routines and habits, and that phrase repeated throughout like a mantra: I followed her home. The handwriting was neat and precise, unmistakably similar to Claire's own penmanship evident in her other journals and letters. But the content was disturbing, detailing apparent stalking behaviors directed at 5 different women over a period of years. The most recent entry was dated just 2 days before Claire's estimated time of death. Detective Fisher requested a toxicology screen as part of the autopsy. The results came back 3 weeks later. Claire had died from a lethal dose of potassium chloride, easily detected if specifically tested for, but otherwise appearing similar to a natural heart attack, particularly in an elderly person. It was not among her prescribed medications. The investigation shifted gears. Claire Bennett, the kindly librarian, the animal lover, the gentle neighbor who baked pies, was now both a murder victim and a suspected stalker. Interviews with Claire's acquaintances revealed a woman who few people truly knew beyond surface interactions. She lived alone but seemed content with her solitude. She never spoke of her past beyond vague references to growing up out west. Her niece, Elaine, knew little about her aunt's early life. My mother, Claire's sister, said there were things the family didn't discuss, Elaine told investigators during a video call. I gathered there was some kind of incident when Claire was in her 20s, but no one would talk about it. We only saw her at holidays, and even then, she kept to herself. Detective Fisher assigned an officer to track down each of the women named in the Red Journal. 3 had moved away from Millfield years ago. 1 had died in a car accident in 2019. The 5th, Melissa Harper, still lived less than a mile from Claire's house. Melissa, a 48-year-old dental hygienist, appeared genuinely shocked when shown her name in the journal. Claire, the lady with the cats, I barely knew her. Sometimes I'd see her at the grocery store, but we never spoke beyond hello. When asked if she'd ever noticed anyone following her, Melissa hesitated before answering. There was a period, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when I felt like I was being watched. I'd see the same car parked across from my house sometimes. I mentioned it to my husband, but he thought I was being paranoid. She shook her head. I never connected it to Claire. She seemed so harmless. The investigation took another unexpected turn when forensic analysis revealed that the red ink in the journal wasn't ink at all. It was blood. Human blood, type O negative. Claire's blood type was a positive. Meanwhile, as officers cataloged items from Claire's home, they discovered something else, a box of photographs in the attic, carefully preserved. Most were ordinary landscapes, cats, garden scenes, but in one envelope were surveillance-style photos of the 5 women named in the journal, taken through windows or from parked cars. The photos spanned over a decade. But there was one more photograph, older than the others, worn at the edges from handling. It showed a young Claire, perhaps in her early 20s, standing beside another young woman with similar features, sisters possibly. They stood in front of a cabin in a wooded area, arms around each other, smiling. On the back, written in faded blue ink, Claire and Rose, Pine Lake, 1972. Before. Before what? Detective Fisher requested records from other jurisdictions, searching for any mentions of Claire Bennett or her sister Rose. A week later, she received a thin file from the sheriff's office in rural Oregon. In 1972, a young woman named Rose Bennett had disappeared from a family cabin near Pine Lake. The primary suspect had been her boyfriend, but without a body or evidence, the case went cold. The file included a statement from the sister who had reported her missing, Claire Bennett, then 24 years old. As Fisher dug deeper, she uncovered more inconsistencies in Claire's history. The woman had moved constantly for nearly a decade after her sister's disappearance, working in libraries across 6 different states before finally settling in Millfield in the early 1980s. And each of the 5 women named in the Red Journal bore a striking resemblance to Claire's sister Rose, the same heart-shaped face, the same chestnut hair. The potassium chloride that killed Claire was found hidden in a pill bottle labeled as vitamin supplements. Fingerprints on the bottle belonged to Claire and one unidentified individual. The security system Claire had installed years earlier had been disabled the night she died, the control panel wiped clean of prints. 4 months into the investigation, Detective Fisher received an anonymous tip through the department's hotline. A male voice, digitally altered, said simply, "Check the crawl space of Harper's garden shed." Police obtained a warrant for Melissa Harper's property. In the dirt floor of her rarely used garden shed, they found human remains. Preliminary DNA testing suggested they were approximately 50 years old, a woman in her early 20s. When confronted with this evidence, Melissa Harper broke down. "I never meant to kill her," she sobbed, referring to Claire. "She knew too much. She found out somehow." The story Melissa eventually told was complex and disturbing. She wasn't Melissa Harper at all, but rather the daughter of Thomas Crane, the boyfriend who had been suspected in Rose Bennett's disappearance in 1972. Melissa had grown up hearing her father's paranoid whispers about that Bennett woman who wouldn't let it go. When Thomas Crane died in 2010, Melissa found journals detailing what he had done to Rose and his decades-long game of cat and mouse with Claire. "My father killed Rose in a jealous rage," Melissa explained through tears. "He buried her body and convinced everyone she had simply run away, but Claire never believed it. She spent her entire life tracking him down. He kept moving us around, changing our names. When he died, I thought it was finally over." But Claire had eventually found Melissa, the daughter of her sister's killer, and began watching her, collecting evidence. The journal written in blood was her final piece of proof, pages written with Rose's blood, which Thomas Crane had apparently kept as a twisted souvenir, and which Melissa had inherited among her father's belongings. "When I found out Claire was building a case, I panicked," Melissa confessed. "I didn't want to pay for my father's crimes, so I went to her house. I just wanted to talk, to explain that I wasn't him, but she wouldn't listen. She said she was going to the police the next day with everything she had found." The potassium chloride had come from Melissa's husband's medical practice. The premeditation was clear. Nearly 50 years after Rose Bennett's murder, the case was finally closed. 2 women were dead, and a third would spend the rest of her life in prison. But even as investigators packed away the evidence boxes, Detective Fisher remained troubled by one detail. If Claire had finally gathered enough evidence to find justice for her sister, why had she hidden the blood journal behind a false panel rather than keeping it with her other notes and photographs? And hoo-ha. Story 10. The ancient box lay hidden beneath layers of forgotten clutter in the attic, a relic lost in time from the previous inhabitants of the house. Within its depths were faded Polaroids, capturing moments of joy and celebration from bygone birthdays and family gatherings, innocuous images of the past, until her gaze fell upon the final photo. In that snapshot taken in her own living room, familiar furniture and decor surrounded a family she did not recognize. Behind them, barely discernible in the dimness, stood a man in the hallway, a silent observer. A shiver crept up Rebecca's spine as she scrutinized the haunting image, her fingers trembling ever so slightly, causing the edges of the photograph to quiver. The family in the picture, a woman with golden locks, a bespectacled man, and 2 children beamed at the camera, unaware of the ominous figure lurking in the shadows behind them. Frozen in a moment of happiness, they were oblivious to the danger standing mere feet away. Carrying the photograph downstairs, each creak of the wooden steps echoed in the vast, empty house she had occupied for 4 lonely months. The once grand rooms now felt oppressive, suffocating. Placing the picture on her kitchen counter, Rebecca examined it under the harsh glare of fluorescent light. The uncanny resemblance between her home and these unfamiliar faces was unsettling. A seasoned detective, clad in a weathered leather jacket that told tales of past investigations, arrived on the scene. Detective Morgan's keen eyes surveyed the photograph methodically, running a gloved finger along its edge before flipping it over to reveal a blank back. His low voice rumbled as he inquired about the previous owners, the Nelsons, who had sold her the house. Rebecca confessed her limited knowledge of the Nelsons, explaining that they had relocated out of state before she moved in. Nodding knowingly, Morgan requested to borrow the photo for further examination by his team, a glimmer of intrigue flickering in his gaze. Thus began a quiet investigation into the mysterious photograph. Through diligent research, Rebecca discovered a history of residents preceding her. The Nelsons had acquired the property from the Crawfords, who had abruptly vanished after 7 years. Before them, the Mornos had resided there for nearly a decade. A breakthrough emerged unexpectedly when a former mail carrier identified the family in the photo as the enigmatic Sutherlands, who had resided in the house for a fleeting year before disappearing without a trace. The puzzle deepened as forensic analysis dated the photograph to 15 years earlier, revealing eerie details that hinted at orchestrated poses and hidden truths. Further scrutiny exposed a chilling pattern of families vanishing after precisely 1 year of occupancy. Detective Morgan uncovered long-forgotten building records that led to a deceased architect named Samuel Whitfield, whose spectral presence loomed over the house's dark history. Beneath the house's concrete floor, a grim discovery awaited a burial ground for the missing families, perfectly preserved in the earth's embrace. Among their belongings, a camera identical to the one that had captured the haunting Polaroid, along with a trove of photographs depicting unsuspecting families and the ominous figure in the shadows. As the investigation unfolded, a hidden crawlspace in the attic revealed a chilling secret, a journal documenting the meticulous observations of the families, culminating in a bone-chilling entry hinting at Rebecca's precarious fate. Seeking refuge in a hotel under police protection, Rebecca's rest was shattered by a late-night call, the haunting sound of breathing punctuated by the ominous click of a Polaroid camera. The enigma surrounding Samuel Whitfield and his malevolent legacy lingered, casting a shadow over the vacant house and those who dared to unravel its mysteries. The whispers of a darkened room developing new photographs of unseen watchers in the periphery echoed through the empty halls, a testament to the chilling legacy that lingered within the house's walls. And in the silence of the night, the truth remained elusive, veiled by shadows that watched and waited. Story 11. The aged apartment exuded a sense of history, its walls holding secrets whispered by time. The heating system emitted a low, haunting groan, and the pipes rattled like distant echoes of forgotten conversations. These sounds, though unsettling to some, were deemed routine by its inhabitants, a mundane part of the building's character. But one tenant, a young woman, found herself captivated by a different kind of resonance within the walls. It began as a mere whisper, barely audible, yet carrying a mysterious allure. It beckoned to her, calling out her name in a soft, haunting cadence. Curiosity mingled with fear as she pressed her ear against the cold metal grate, her heart quickening with each passing moment. A breath of icy air brushed past her cheek, followed by a playful voice that seemed to dance on the edge of reality. "I know you can hear me," it murmured, sending shivers down her spine. Detective Morgan Shaw, a figure of poise amidst the vacant apartment, stood in silent contemplation. Her gaze fixated on the rusted vent cover, forcibly removed from its place on the wall. Around her, the forensics team meticulously combed through the scene, their cameras capturing every detail in flashes of light. The victim, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace, her absence unnoticed until a noxious odor permeated the building. Officer Patel, his voice steady but tinged with intrigue, relayed the details to Shaw. Alina had reported hearing voices through the vents, a claim dismissed by building management as mere quirks of an old heating system. Yet the scratch marks surrounding the vent told a different story, a tale of desperation etched into metal, as if someone had sought escape from within. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a penchant for nurturing life, had left behind a trail of unanswered questions. Her once vibrant classroom now stood silent, her students' handmade cards a poignant reminder of her absence. Her sister, a portrait of grief, recounted Alina's descent into paranoia in the days leading up to her disappearance, a belief that unseen eyes watched her every move, whispering through the vents in a chilling symphony. As Shaw pieced together the fragments of Alina's life, a haunting realization took hold. The apartment, once a sanctuary of warmth and light, now bore witness to a darkness that lurked within its very walls. The forensics report unveiled unsettling clues, a tapestry of fibers linking victim to vent, a stranger's fingerprint imprinted on the cover's interior, a tapestry of dread woven into the fabric of reality. Amidst the shadows of suspicion, a revelation emerged, a hidden passage within Alina's bathroom, a gateway to the clandestine heart of the building. Within this covert network of walls and vents, a trove of artifacts awaited discovery, a testament to a voyeur's silent vigil, a predator's whispered promises. The investigation unraveled the sinister web woven by Harold Weber, the building superintendent whose facade of normalcy masked a macabre obsession. His computer revealed a digital shrine to his victims, their lives catalogued in meticulous detail. Shaw's gaze lingered on the chilling entries, each a breadcrumb leading to the truth, a truth too ghastly to comprehend. Weber's arrest, a subdued affair in the dead of night, marked the end of a reign of terror that had spanned years. His confession, a chilling symphony of madness and malevolence, echoed through the confines of the interrogation room. The whispers that had once haunted Alina now found voice in his words, a testament to the darkness that dwelled within the walls. As the trial concluded, Shaw bore witness to a verdict foretold a judgment that sealed Weber's fate. Yet, as he was led away, a glint of defiance lingered in his eyes, a promise of whispers yet to come. The building, now a silent sentinel of past horrors, stood as a testament to the lingering echoes of a predator's legacy. And so the apartment building remains a relic of its haunted past, its corridors echoing with the whispers of those who once dwelled within. Residents come and go, their footsteps a hesitant cadence in the halls of a place touched by darkness. The heating system groans, the pipes rattle a symphony of eerie familiarity that lulls them into a false sense of security. But deep within the walls, the whispers persist, a reminder of the secrets that lie dormant, waiting to be heard once more. Story 12: The Enigmatic Disappearance. The cafe had been his sanctuary for years, the same corner table, the same black coffee, the same silent contemplation. He was a regular face amidst the bustling crowd, yet a stranger to all. Then one day he didn't arrive. His absence raised eyebrows, leading to a discovery that defied logic. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the mystery of the man known only as John Doe. Security footage revealed his routine entrance, his solitary presence at the table, and his inexplicable vanishing act. No trace, no clues, just an enigma shrouded in anonymity. As Mercer unraveled the puzzle, she encountered a wallet abandoned by John, containing only a photo and empty details. The more she probed, the more elusive his identity became. A blank canvas, a phantom in the midst of reality. The contents of the wallet whispered of a life lived in shadows, untraceable credit cards, mysterious cash, and a solitary business card with a ghostly phone number. Each lead a dead end, each trail leading to nowhere. The cafe's barista, a silent observer of John's presence, offered scarce insights into the enigmatic figure. A man of few words, a figure of mystery, a puzzle begging to be solved. Mercer's investigation took a surreal turn as she delved deeper into the cryptic notebook left behind. Pages filled with cryptic symbols, sketches of unknown structures, and a language that defied decryption. A world within a world, a mystery within a mystery. The mirror in the cafe, an ancient relic adorned with cryptic symbols akin to those in John's notebook, caught Mercer's attention. A gateway to the unknown, a portal to another realm, a key to unlocking the secrets that lay beyond. Behind the mirror's facade, a hidden chamber revealed a trove of identical wallets, a journal chronicling decades of enigmatic entries, and a chilling revelation of experiments in temporal manipulation and identity transference. John Doe, a man out of time, a ghost in the machine. As Mercer unearthed the truth behind John's disappearance, strange occurrences plagued the cafe, reflections moving independently, phantom sightings of the enigmatic figure, and a sense of unease that lingered in the air. A chance encounter with a former physicist shed light on John's true identity, Daniel Weston, a brilliant mind lost to the depths of experimental science. A man who dared to breach the boundaries of reality to seek truths beyond comprehension. The final pieces of the puzzle fell into place as Mercer witnessed the impossible two versions of Daniel Weston existing in parallel, caught in a dance of shadows and light. A convergence of realities, a crossing of paths, a moment frozen in eternity. And as the mirror shattered, as the final note whispered of closure and warning, Mercer stood at the precipice of the unknown. The man who didn't exist, the experiment that defied reason, the truth that eluded comprehension. The case of Daniel Weston, the man who slipped through the cracks of reality, remains a haunting enigma, a tale whispered in hushed tones. The cafe, a silent witness to mysteries untold, faded into memory, leaving behind only echoes of a presence that lingered in the shadows. And as Mercer retreated from the force, haunted by the specter of the man who vanished into thin air, she found solace in words written in a notebook that mirrored his own. A fragment of the mirror adorned her wall, a reminder of the mysteries that lay beyond, waiting to be unraveled. Story 13. The vintage apartment possessed its own peculiarities. Pipes uttered low groans, floorboards whispered with every step taken. Yet the new tenant discerned that what she heard transcended the realm of normalcy. The footfalls were too precise, too deliberate. They emanated from above, deliberate and unhurried. However, she resided on the topmost floor. One fateful evening, she mustered the courage to tap on the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased. A profound silence lingered. Then a solitary knock reverberated from within the ceiling. Sarah Coleman, the tenant, opted to keep the knocking encounter to herself. She persuaded her mind that it was merely the building settling or perchance a small creature that had infiltrated the attic space. Despite the footfalls persisting night after night, she adapted, escalating her television volume, donning headphones to bed anything to drown out the methodical footsteps that traversed her ceiling in the obscurity. Detective Morris's attention was piqued by the apartment when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace during regular upkeep. The worker had dismantled a portion of drywall in the hallway adjoining Sarah's apartment to rectify a water leak. Behind the wall, he stumbled upon a narrow passage that defied the building blueprints. Upon shining his flashlight inside, the beam revealed an improvised living area, scattered food wrappers, discarded water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a small diary. The building superintendent promptly summoned the police. Detective Morris arrived with his partner, Detective Rivera, to find the maintenance worker ashen and trembling. "Someone has been inhabiting the walls," he kept repeating. "Someone has been watching." The diary contained meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman, her routine, her visitors, her dining preferences, her viewing habits, her bathing times, her sleeping schedule. The handwriting commenced in a neat fashion but morphed into erratic scribbles towards the final pages, with peculiar symbols adorning the margins. "The subject no longer responds to my signals," the concluding entry read. "She has elected to disregard me. No one disregards me." Forensic teams scoured the crawl space and unearthed fingerprints that matched no database records. They unveiled a labyrinthine network of passages integrated into the walls and ceilings of the building, some dating back decades as per structural analysis. The passages interlinked to 5 distinct apartments, but culminated in observation points, minute apertures camouflaged as fixtures or minor damages in only one, Sarah Coleman's. The investigation squad interviewed current residents, none of whom reported anything out of the ordinary beyond the customary apartment commotions. Previous residents recounted a divergent narrative. 3 former occupants of Sarah's apartment narrated sensations of being surveilled or hearing inexplicable movements. 1 had vacated after a mere fortnight. None had articulated their encounters, dreading they would appear paranoid. The breakthrough in the case occurred when forensics unearthed minuscule blood spatter in one of the crawl spaces. DNA examination linked it to Martin Weaver, a former resident who had vanished without a trace 4 years prior. His family had lodged a missing persons report, but the case had grown cold. He had dwelled in the apartment directly beneath Sarah's. Detective Morris revisited Martin's disappearance. According to neighbors, Martin had lamented about noises emanating from above his apartment. He had confronted the tenant residing above him at the time, a reticent man named Edward who kept to himself. Subsequently, Martin disappeared. Edward absconded the following month, leaving no forwarding address. Investigators delved into Edward's rental history and unearthed a recurrent pattern. He had inhabited 6 disparate apartment complexes over 2 decades. In each instance, he had requested top-floor units, forged minimal social bonds, and eventually absconded without notice. A neighbor from his 3rd abode recollected him as intense and reminisced about his frequent gripes regarding requiring silence. The investigators procured property records that unveiled Edward had procured remote rural land. Upon arrival at the site, they stumbled upon a cabin bedecked with photographs and notes. Snapshots of denizens from sundry apartment buildings encompassing Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver. Diagrams of ventilation systems and structural vulnerabilities. Elaborate journals delineating observations of the specimens and sustaining the habitat. Nestled in the heart of the cabin stood a corkboard adorned with newspaper clippings. Missing persons reports, 6 of them. All former apartment residents from buildings where Edward had dwelled. Deep gouges marred the wooden floor beneath the board, as though something ponderous had been dragged incessantly. Beyond the cabin, cadaver dogs steered investigators to a freshly disturbed patch of soil. Excavation unveiled human remains, and then another burial site, and another. As forensic anthropologists embarked on the somber task of identifying the victims, Detective Morris revisited Sarah's apartment complex. The crawl spaces had been sealed off, yet denizens still attested to sporadic noises. Maintenance personnel installing new security systems stumbled upon an object tucked into a corner where the ceiling met the wall in the hallway, a fresh diary, newer than the initial one discovered. The premiere page bore only a single line: "They found my old nest, but not my new one." The script mirrored that of the former diary. The ultimatum held a rudimentary sketch of Sarah's apartment layout with a new passageway delineated in crimson, and a date for that night. Officers hastened to evacuate Sarah, only to find her apartment deserted. Her phone lay atop the kitchen counter. Her television persistently emitted a glow. Her shower was still running. Within the lavatory, mist veiled the mirror. As it dissipated, a message materialized, etched into the glass by a finger: "Look up." The ceiling panel above the shower had been dislodged. The manhunt for Edward endures. Investigators have identified him as Edward Mercer, erstwhile construction worker specializing in refurbishments. His comprehension of building frameworks had empowered him to sculpt his clandestine network of vantage points and passages. Thermal imaging scans of Sarah's building unveiled no signs of current occupancy within the walls. Sarah Coleman remains elusive. Her case has been correlated with akin disappearances across myriad states. Authorities have disseminated cautions to apartment complex managers regarding unauthorized alterations and concealed spaces. The specter that torments Detective Morris most is not the graves, the diaries, or even the photographs of unsuspecting denizens. It's the contemplation of Sarah, night after night, hearkening to those footsteps above her in an apartment bereft of an upstairs neighbor. The footfalls that ceased when she thumped, and then thumped back. On occasion, during nocturnal solitude in his abode, Detective Morris discovers himself gazing upward at his ceiling, listening, waiting, and pondering who else might be listening too. Story 14: The Enigmatic Chamber. The old wooden plank gave way beneath Sarah's foot, shifting ever so slightly. Intrigued, she knelt down, her fingers tracing the edges of the loose board. A hidden gap lay beneath the seemingly solid floor, beckoning her to explore. With delicate precision, she lifted the boards, unveiling a dark, narrow space that stretched beneath her new home. As her eyes adjusted to the dimness, shapes emerged from the shadows. A musty mattress, a worn chair, and in the corner, a weathered notebook filled with pages bearing her name repeated endlessly. Detective Morgan Reed observed quietly as Sarah peered into the abyss that lay hidden beneath her sanctuary. The fear in Sarah's eyes spoke of a deeper disturbance than mere discovery. It was a violation of her safety, an intrusion of malevolence into her newfound haven. "Please refrain from touching anything further." Detective Reed's voice was steady yet commanding. Clicking on her flashlight, she cast light upon the concealed chamber, revealing walls adorned with surveillance photographs, snapshots of Sarah's daily routines, her every move meticulously documented. A shrine of obsession, carefully concealed beneath her very feet. Sarah had purchased the quaint cottage from the estate of Walter Green, an elderly recluse with no known kin. The property had stood vacant for months, its listing only mentioning minor renovations. No mention was made of the hidden secrets lurking within. "I never met him, the former owner," Sarah whispered. "The neighbors claimed he kept to himself. The basement was supposed to be sealed off long ago. The inspections never hinted at this." Crime scene investigators arrived, their tools echoing against the wooden floors as they entered. They meticulously documented the eerie chamber, eventually removing the mattress, chair, and notebook for further analysis. Forensic experts uncovered a myriad of fingerprints belonging solely to Walter Green, painting a disturbing picture of his fixation on Sarah. A timeline emerged, revealing years of clandestine surveillance, his presence intertwined with hers unnoticed. The level of obsession often escalates, the department psychologist explained. Fantasies turn into plans. The hidden room suggests he was preparing for something more sinister. Detective Reed's investigation took a chilling turn when she interviewed a former colleague of Walter's. The man, uneasy, confessed. Walter spoke of her often. He believed she was someone he knew. I thought it harmless, just an old man's fancy. I never imagined. His voice trailed off, haunted by what he knew. A search of Walter's workplace locker unveiled a mysterious key, leading them to a storage unit registered in his name. Inside, a replica of Sarah's former life awaited them: furniture, decorations, even a mannequin resembling her. A calendar marked a date that sent shivers down their spines, a crimson circle emphasizing the word together. Walter's past revealed a history of institutionalization for erotomania, a delusion of love unreciprocated. Decades of normalcy shattered by his fixation on Sarah, a trigger for his dormant obsessions. As Sarah walked through the house one final time, she couldn't shake the chilling what-ifs. What if she hadn't noticed the loose plank? What if Walter had succeeded in his twisted plans? The chapter closed with Walter's death, his actions labeled stalking with intent, though his plans were thwarted. Sarah chose to leave, seeking solace far from the memories that haunted her. Detective Reed kept a watchful eye, a silent guardian of what could have been. The cottage found new owners, oblivious to its dark past. The hidden chamber sealed, the floorboards replaced. Life moved on, but for those who knew the truth, the tale of the room beneath the floor lingered, a cautionary tale of unseen dangers, of monsters unchecked, and of victims unaware of how close they came to their own demise. Story 15. The tale unfolds in a dimly lit costume emporium on the brink of closure, where remnants of the past were being liquidated. Amidst the fading inventory, a woman chanced upon a singular mask perched upon a dusty shelf. Its delicate features exuded an eerie, lifelike quality that stirred a deep unease within her. Placing it before the cashier, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face as he muttered, "That's not ours." Perplexed, she sought out a tag, only to find none present. With a nonchalant shrug, she carried the enigmatic mask to her abode. Under the veil of night, a soft disturbance roused her from slumber. The gentle whisper of fabric in motion filled the room. Startled, she sought the mask where she had left it on the dresser, only to discover it now rested upon her nightstand, its gaze fixed upon her. This woman, known as Catherine Reed, was discovered by a concerned neighbor. The front door stood ajar, allowing the morning light to spill into the shadowed interior. Expecting a simple book return, the neighbor stumbled upon a scene that would perplex investigators for years to come. Catherine lay lifeless upon her bedroom floor, the mysterious mask vanished without a trace. Detective Morgan arrived on the scene as forensic specialists meticulously documented the eerie tableau. The rhythmic click of shutters punctuated the somber silence, while murmured voices discussed the absence of forced entry. Noting every detail, the detective's keen gaze lingered on a partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass, and other seemingly mundane clues surrounding the tragic demise of the once vibrant Catherine Reed. The medical examiner's somber assessment revealed no obvious cause of death upon initial inspection. No visible wounds, no signs of struggle, just a visage etched in terror. The detective, bending closer, whispered a chilling observation. Something frightened her to her untimely end. In life, Catherine had been a meticulous art appraiser, renowned for her discerning eye for authenticity. Colleagues lauded her ability to detect forgeries with uncanny precision. Could this very talent have led to her sinister fate? Security footage from the costume shop offered a puzzling clue. The cashier's bafflement at the mask's origin was palpable, prompting a futile consultation with the owner, who vehemently disavowed any knowledge of such an item. A visit to the now vacant shop unveiled a disconcerting revelation: the mask had materialized during a clearance sale, its origins shrouded in mystery. A breakthrough emerged when microscopic fibers were discovered on Catherine's fingertips, a cryptic blend of human hair and an organic substance defying identification. This discovery unraveled a chilling pattern of similar deaths linked to the acquisition of peculiar masks, each victim captured in a final moment of abject terror. Consulting with a retired detective, a clandestine meeting unveiled a trove of ancient symbols hidden within the mask's symbols, hinting at a ritual of soul transference with malevolent implications. A journal clandestinely stowed in Catherine's apartment shed light on her escalating dread, hinting at a sinister sentience lurking within the mask. The detective pieced together the macabre puzzle, connecting the dots between the eerie fibers, Catherine's research, and a history of unexplained deaths. The cause of death was finally ascribed to cardiac arrest, induced by sheer terror, a terror so profound it seized her heart. Surveillance footage from a neighboring residence unearthed a chilling revelation: a figure donning a mask, mimicking Catherine's movements with an uncanny precision that bespoke a ghastly imitation. The mask vanished, reappearing months later in a distant vintage shop, leaving a trail of unanswered questions in its wake. The enigma persists, the mask's whereabouts unknown, its malevolent purpose lingering in the shadows. The detective safeguards Catherine's journal, a testament to a truth beyond official records. In the dead of night, she startles awake, haunted by an unshakable sensation of being watched. Securing her abode, she dreads the day the mask resurfaces, poised to ensnare another unwitting victim in its timeless cycle of dread and despair. The mask waits, patient and hungry, eager to claim its next host in a chilling dance that spans centuries, an eternal quest for what lies behind mortal eyes. Story 16, the tale of the old manor, had always been whispered among the townsfolk, a story of whispers and secrets hidden within its walls. The new owners, Daniel and Meredith, brushed off the crackling of the intercom as a quirky relic of the past, until one fateful night when curiosity got the best of them. As the husband pressed the button, a haunting whisper pierced through the static, sending shivers down his spine. His wife, standing behind him, denied ever uttering those words, setting an eerie tone in the air. The Victorian manor stood stoic amidst ancient oak trees, its facade weathered but its interior a blend of old charm and modern luxury. The Parkers had bought the property at a bargain, swayed by the allure of its history and the vintage intercom system that connected every room. However, the house held more than just memories of a bygone era. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a possible break-in, her intuition telling her there was more to the story than met the eye. Daniel, with a haunted look in his eyes, guided her through the grand foyer, recounting the strange events that had unfolded since they moved in. Meredith, pale and tense, revealed a chilling discovery hidden behind a wall: a leather-bound journal belonging to Eleanor, the previous owner, filled with ominous entries hinting at danger. The investigation into the mysterious disappearance of Eleanor and the sinister secrets of the house began to unravel. Records pointed to Vincent Blackwood, Eleanor's husband, as the prime suspect, a man with a dark past shrouded in deception. As the team dug deeper, they unearthed skeletal remains buried beneath the garden shed, confirming the tragic fate of Alina. Vincent, now aged and frail, confessed to the murder, his calm demeanor sending shivers down the detective's spine. He spoke of silencing Alina's incessant voice from the intercom, weaving a web of lies to cover his tracks for decades. The truth had been buried along with his wife, until the house itself whispered its dark secrets to those who dared to listen. The trial brought closure to the haunting tale of the manor, with Vincent sentenced for his heinous crime. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the house's history, bid farewell, holding a solemn memorial for Alina in the garden where she had been laid to rest. The intercom, a conduit for the past, was removed by the new owners, its whispers fading into the echoes of time. Detective Reeves, as she closed the case file for the last time, pondered on the house that had answered back, a place where echoes of the past lingered in the shadows. Driving past the manor, she would feel a chill in the air, as if the spirits of the past whispered their gratitude for finally being heard. The house stood silent, its secrets laid bare, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind closed doors. And as the wind carried whispers through the trees, the tale of the manor faded into the night, a mystery now at rest. Story 17. The mysterious package arrived at her door without a sender's label, mysterious in its lack of a return address or tracking number. A plain cardboard box tinged with the morning's dew sat on her porch, seemingly misplaced. Sarah Miller hesitated, knowing it wasn't intended for her. Her address was correct, but the name was a stranger, as she could have left it untouched, left it where it lay, but curiosity beckoned her closer. With a tug, she peeled back the tape, a silent unveiling of its secrets. Anticipating mundane contents, books, clothes, perhaps trinkets, she found instead a VHS tape, accompanied by a solitary sticky note, "Watch alone." Sarah held the black plastic tape in her hands, a weight that felt wrong, burdened with a gravity she couldn't quite place. Her fingertips traced the worn edges, feeling the imperfections etched into the plastic casing. The handwritten note bore the traces of urgency, each stroke pressing into the paper with a silent plea. Around her, the suburban neighborhood hummed with its usual rhythms, a distant dog barking, children's laughter weaving through the air, the drone of a lawnmower cutting through the morning serenity. Unaware of the silent drama unfolding within Sarah's home, life continued its ordinary course. She carried the package inside, setting it on her kitchen counter, uncertainty clouding her thoughts. The name Daniel Whitaker meant nothing to her. In her 4 years in the house, she had never encountered mail addressed to that name. The previous occupants, the Johnsons, had bid farewell to the place, leaving behind their traces and memories. Curiosity warred with unease as she glanced at her seldom-used VCR, a relic of days gone by. There was something about the tape, a whisper of mystery cloaked in worn black plastic. Against her own better judgment, Sarah slid the tape into the machine. At first, static danced across the screen, a curtain of white noise that gradually sharpened into focus. A dimly lit room materialized, bathed in the soft glow of a lone lamp. The camera angle was askew, casting shadows over a man seated in a wooden chair, his features initially shrouded in darkness. "My name is Daniel Whitaker," his voice emerged, soft but unwavering. "If you're watching this, someone found you, and that means they'll find me too." As he leaned forward, illumination revealed a face etched with weariness and vigilance, tired eyes, stubble framing his jaw, disheveled hair. "I didn't do it. You have to believe me. They framed me with planted evidence, my fingerprints, my DNA, all of it." The camera trembled as Daniel adjusted it, unveiling the stark simplicity of the room he occupied, a bare space, devoid of comfort, a temporary refuge for a man on the run. The police report will paint me as her killer, but I never even knew her until she was gone, dead, murdered in her own home, and somehow they pinned it all on me. Detective Eliza Ramirez studied the VHS tape before her, the latest in a series of cryptic messages from Daniel Whitaker. Each tape, each recipient, woven into a web of deceit surrounding Catherine Walsh's murder. The suspect vanished without a trace, now haunting the investigation through these enigmatic recordings. The initial case against Whitaker seemed a clear-cut affair: DNA evidence, witness sightings, circumstantial links all pointing towards his guilt. Until the tapes surfaced, casting shadows of doubt over the truth. The tapes complicate matters, Detective Ramirez voiced her thoughts, recording the twists and turns of the case. Whitaker's tale straddles a thin line between deception and revelation. Her evidence board painted a stark picture: images of Catherine Walsh, a whistleblower against PharmaCorp, her demise tied to the dark secrets she unearthed. The detective sensed a nefarious hand guiding the narrative, obscuring the truth beneath layers of deceit. Sarah Miller's world shifted 3 days after the initial tape. A second package carrying a trove of incriminating documents, proof of Catherine's findings, a trail leading straight to the heart of PharmaCorp. Detective Ramirez, aided by the other recipients, traced Whitaker's digital breadcrumbs, unraveling a conspiracy that spanned corporate corridors and shadowed alleyways. The truth, a fragile thread, threatened to unravel the carefully woven tapestry of lies. The breakthrough came when Sarah noticed a detail overlooked by others: a reflection in a window, a glimmer of truth hidden in plain sight. Together with Detective Ramirez, they followed the trail to a storage unit, a clandestine repository of damning evidence. Daniel Whitaker's journal, Catherine's files, and a damning confession etched in ink, all leading to the doorstep of PharmaCorp's head of security, the mastermind behind the intricate frame-up. Justice, a quiet arrival, not heralded by sirens but by the weight of irrefutable proof. 3 executives indicted, the truth unfurling like a banner of vindication. Daniel Whitaker emerged from his exile, a ghost of his former self, the specter of false accusations still lingering in his eyes. Sarah met him once more, their paths converging on that fateful porch where innocence and guilt had clashed in a battle of shadows. "Why me?" Sarah's voice carried a whisper of uncertainty, a question lingering in the air. "Why send it to my address?" Whitaker met her gaze, exhaustion etched into his features. "The algorithm chose you. I needed strangers, unconnected to me or Catherine, those who could see beyond the lies spun by the media." In that moment of shared silence, they pondered the fragility of truth, the thin veil separating justice from orchestrated deceit. As the VHS tapes found their place in evidence, tangible relics of a hidden saga, Sarah realized the profound truth that sometimes justice arrives in unexpected parcels, bearing unfamiliar names, awaiting the daring souls willing to peer beyond the surface. Story 18, the worn envelope, its corners tinted yellow, bore a fresh stamp, as though it had traveled through time to reach its destination just days ago. With delicate precision, the detective unfolded its contents. Inside lay a lone sheet of paper, the words typed hastily in a jagged, uneven script. "I regret what I've done." A dampness clung to the paper, carrying with it a faint scent of iron that lingered in the air. It was then that the detective's gaze fell upon the reddish streak along the paper's edge. Not ink, but blood. Detective Sarah Morgan, with a practiced touch, secured the letter in an evidence bag, her gloved hands moving with meticulous care. The forensics team's findings confirmed her suspicions: the blood was human, a match to DNA from an unsolved homicide that had plagued the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, bearing multiple stab wounds. Her laptop was missing, her notes scattered, hinting that her investigation might have led to her tragic end. Despite tireless efforts, the case had grown cold until this cryptic letter found its way to the homicide division, a message of remorse or manipulation. The paper bore few fingerprints, only ghostly smudges hinting at gloved hands. The postmark, however, offered a thread to follow. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Morgan pinned the letter's image to the board, a focal point amidst a sea of dead-end lights. "This changes everything," she announced to the room. "Our perpetrator carries a burden of guilt." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner, studied the letter thoughtfully. "Or perhaps it's a facade," he countered. "A macabre performance meant to toy with us." The unique typewriter impressions led the forensics team down a path to a model long out of production, a relic of the past with a haunting presence in the present. They combed through antique shops, seeking a match to the obsolete machine. As the investigation unfolded, they delved into Rebecca's life, uncovering her relentless pursuit of truth and justice. Her assignment, delving into a family embroiled in power and intrigue, had exposed her to danger. Interviews with her boyfriend, Michael Barnes, unveiled a shadow of fear in his eyes, a revelation of secrets kept and warnings unheeded. A second letter arrived, mirroring the first in its eerie composition. This time the confession was more detailed. She delved too deep into the family's secrets, the inheritance, the patriarch's demise. It spiraled beyond my control. Their journey led them to the grand estate of the deceased patriarch, where suspicion lingered in the air like a ghostly presence. The eldest son, Richard, presented a veneer of composure, his explanations too polished to be sincere. A breakthrough emerged when microscopic fibers linked the envelopes to custom stationery owned by the youngest daughter, Eleanor, implicating Richard in the sinister correspondence. A hidden chamber in Richard's home unveiled a trove of damning evidence articles about Rebecca, surveillance records, and the vintage typewriter that birthed the chilling letters. Blood analysis sealed the connection to the victim. The tangled web extended further, weaving a thread between Richard and Michael through financial transactions that hinted at a sinister pact. Michael's confession unraveled the conspiracy, his role that of a pawn in a deadly game. Eleanor's courage in sharing a damning recording captured the true extent of Richard's malevolence. As justice closed its grip around the guilty, Richard's protestations of innocence rang hollow in the courtroom. The evidence spoke louder than words. A swift verdict sealed his fate. In the aftermath, Detective Morgan stood before Rebecca's grieving parents, offering solace in the shadow of loss. The blood-stained letters, now housed in evidence, served as a poignant reminder that even the most intricate schemes bear traces of truth, and that the weight of remorse, whether genuine or feigned, can unravel the most carefully crafted deception. The tale of Rebecca Warren became a lesson etched in the annals of detective lore, a testament to the power of old relics and the silent whispers of guilt that echo through the corridors of justice. Story 19. In a quiet apartment that had sat empty for months, new tenants moved in with little expectation, just dust, perhaps some abandoned furniture. However, one door stood firm, refusing to yield. It was a closet locked from within. The landlord, with reluctance, forced it open, anticipating old coats or forgotten items. Instead, they discovered a sight that sent chills down their spines. The walls bore deep, uneven scratches, etched into the wood with desperation. And nestled in the corner, an ancient flip phone, its battery long extinguished except for a solitary, unread message glowing on the screen. Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator, had encountered many grim scenes in her career, yet this particular discovery made her hairs prickle with unease, not due to blood or overt violence, but because of the haunting implications of those scratch marks, a poignant testimony of someone trapped within that confined space, struggling, desperate. "We need forensics on site immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently documented the scratches, "and gather the records of the previous tenants." The message on the phone simply stated, "I know what you did." The landlord, a jittery man with perpetually clammy hands, informed them that the previous tenant had vanished without a trace, leaving behind unpaid rent. A young woman, kept to herself, disappeared about 6 months ago, he muttered, eyes skirting away from the closet. Never caused any trouble. Forensics analysis unveiled multiple blood traces ensconced in the scratch marks on the walls. Most matched a single individual, presumably the former tenant, Emma Caldwell, aged 28, reported missing when she ceased appearing at her workplace. However, 2 other DNA samples were unearthed. One remained unidentified in the database, while the other belonged to an individual supposedly deceased for 2 years. "This can't be right," Shaw murmured, scrutinizing the lab findings. Derek Mercer, previously convicted of assault and reportedly deceased in a vehicular accident, had his fresh DNA imprinted on the closet walls. Dental records had confirmed his demise, yet here was his genetic imprint anew. Emma's apartment narrated a tale of a life interrupted, unopened mail, a neglected coffee mug in the sink, a neatly arranged bed. Her phone records unveiled a pattern, regular calls with her sister, abruptly terminated. Additionally, there were numerous calls from an unfamiliar number in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. The sister mentioned Emma had a mysterious boyfriend, Officer Reed relayed. No name, just described him as intense and private. Surveillance footage from a nearby convenience store depicted Emma entering her building one evening, shadowed shortly after by a man in a baseball cap, his face strategically averted from cameras. A breakthrough emerged when partial fingerprints matching Derek Mercer were found on the closet's internal doorknob. "He staged his death," Shaw concluded. "The question remains why and what's his link to Emma." The unidentified DNA sample unveiled another missing persons case, Lynette Porter, who had vanished 3 years earlier. Although the investigation into her disappearance had grown cold, descriptions matched a woman whom neighbors had seen visiting Emma's apartment on several occasions. Connecting the dots through traffic camera footage, Shaw traced a vehicle registered to Derek Mercer's mother frequenting the vicinity of Emma's residence. The driver's stature and build aligned with Derek's profile. The inquiry led them to a secluded estate owned by Mercer's family. Concealed behind robust basement doors, they discovered Lynette Porter alive yet severely malnourished, confined in conditions reminiscent of the closet that had imprisoned Emma. "He made me witness," Lynette whispered, her gaze vacant. "Said I needed to learn the consequences for women attempting to escape." Evidence accumulated, diaries chronicling Mercer's fixation on dominance, images of women resembling Emma and Lynette, and most damningly videos of Mercer coercing Emma into the closet. "She thought she could expose me," his voice echoed in the recordings. "Reveal our secrets. Nobody divulges my truths." The pursuit for Derek Mercer spanned multiple jurisdictions. While law enforcement scoured for him, forensic psychologists constructed a profile that sent shivers down the investigators' spines. Mercer didn't crave mere death, he derived pleasure from inflicting torment, relishing the sight of hope dwindling in cramped confines. Upon Mercer's apprehension at a bus terminal, he bore a new identity and a ticket to a coastal destination. Nestled in his backpack were a roll of duct tape, a hunting knife, and a newspaper clipping chronicling Emma's vanishing. During interrogation, Mercer maintained a composed, almost affable demeanor. She sent that text herself, he asserted regarding the phone. She desired someone to locate her, but she didn't merit salvation. The trial unveiled the intricate ruse Mercer had woven to fake his demise, utilizing dental records from a vagrant mirroring his physical attributes. For 2 years, he had eluded detection, fixating on women resembling his initial victim. Emma's remains were never recovered. Forensic evidence hinted at her eventual demise within that claustrophobic closet, futilely etching at walls that would never yield. The jury swiftly returned a guilty verdict after deliberating for a mere 4 hours. As the judge pronounced a life sentence devoid of parole, Mercer offered a faint smile, as if content in a private logic known only to him. During the sentencing, Lynette Porter addressed the court. He confined us in small spaces because that's where his mind dwells imprisoned in darkness. While he decays in his cell, I shall stand beneath the sun. The case reshaped departmental procedures for missing persons inquiries, emphasizing relationship patterns and scrutinizing rental properties. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's apartment on her office wall, a poignant reminder that the most harrowing crime scenes are not always drenched in blood, but in the poignant marks of one fighting to survive. Story 20. In the quiet of the night, a faint flicker danced across the screen of the baby monitor, catching the mother's attention. At first, she brushed it off as a glitch, a simple interference in the feed. But then a crackling of static filled the room, and a voice, soft and hushed, whispered, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A shiver ran down her spine, her heart quickening with unease. Hastily she hurried to her son's room, dread tightening her chest, only to find the crib empty, the room still, the window shut tight, and the door securely locked. The only anomaly was the stuffed rabbit lying on the floor, its dark, glassy eyes fixed upon her. Rebecca's screams pierced the night, tearing through the silence until her voice grew hoarse. The neighbors, stirred by her cries, summoned help, and soon emergency services descended upon the scene. They discovered her cradling the stuffed rabbit, lost in a world of disbelief and fear. Her baby boy, Samuel, vanished without a trace. The investigation unfolded slowly, yielding little in the way of answers. No signs of forced entry marred the home, the security system remained undisturbed, and the baby monitor footage offered only the chilling voice and eerie static. How could a child be taken from a locked home without a single trace, save for a misplaced toy? Suspicions turned toward Rebecca, her strained marriage, her battle with postpartum depression. The community murmured their doubts, casting shadows upon her grief. Then a breakthrough emerged from the shadows. Tiny fibers, foreign and unknown, clung to the nursery windowsill, hinting at a stealthy intruder, a phantom in the night. The focus shifted, revealing a figure moving in darkness, leaving behind a footprint of mystery and intrigue. Daniel, the absent husband, returned to a storm of accusations and doubts. His hands bore tales of rock climbing, his hobbies and secrets coming to light. A web of lies and deceit unfurled, exposing a man with a hidden life, hidden motives. As the investigation delved deeper, the baby monitor, once a source of terror, became a beacon of truth. Hacked and manipulated, it led the way to a hidden chamber where Samuel was found, tended to by a woman named Elaine. Her eyes, empty and haunted, spoke volumes as she was led away in chains. The threads of the past intertwined, revealing a tale of loss, obsession, and betrayal. Elaine, the first wife haunted by a miscarriage, sought solace in a stolen child, in a life that wasn't hers. Daniel's denial crumbled beneath the weight of evidence, the fibers, the footprints, the digital whispers of a plan long in motion. The courtroom echoed with the hush of disbelief as the truth unfurled, as the voices of the past whispered through the darkness. In the end, justice prevailed, but scars lingered, memories haunted. Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new beginning, far from the shadows of the past. The baby monitor lay silent, its truth revealed, its secrets laid bare. And in the stillness of the night, the glassy eyes of the stuffed rabbit watched, a silent witness to the mysteries that unfolded when the darkness whispered its secrets. Story 21, The Mysterious Doppelganger. She wiped away the steam on the mirror, gazing at her own reflection. Everything seemed normal at first glance, her features familiar, her attire unchanged. Yet a subtle unease crept in as she continued to stare. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement that did not belong to her. Turning away, she expected her reflection to follow suit, but it remained motionless, silently observing. Thus began the enigma of Rebecca Thorne, sparked by that unsettling moment in her bathroom, a moment that would baffle investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Living solitary in a modest apartment nestled in a serene suburban enclave, Rebecca was known to her acquaintances as methodical and reserved. She maintained a polite distance from others while still being amicable with her neighbors. Her occupation as a data analyst for a mid-sized corporation dictated a life of routine and precision. There was nothing in her demeanor to suggest that she would become the focal point of one of the most enigmatic criminal inquiries of the decade. The initial signs were subtle. Objects in Rebecca's living space seemed slightly askew, not missing, but rearranged. A coffee mug shifted to a different shelf, books realigned, her toothbrush found on the wrong side of the sink. She brushed off these anomalies as mere lapses in memory, attributing them to her long hours spent poring over spreadsheets under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights. Detective Marion Shaw's attention was piqued when Rebecca, after enduring weeks of these disturbances, finally reached out to the authorities. The initial evaluation yielded no concrete evidence of criminal activity. It seemed more suited for mental health services than police intervention. Shaw documented the complaint but relegated it to the stack of lower priority cases, deeming it as a woman feeling a pervasive sense of unease within her own home. However, the pivotal moment arrived with the incident involving the bathroom mirror. During her subsequent interaction with the police, Rebecca recounted the experience in vivid detail, the disconcerting sensation of her reflection moving independently, the constant feeling of being watched in solitude. This time she had tangible proof, footage from a security camera she had installed, aimed at her front entrance. The recording unveiled a chilling revelation that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The grainy video captured Rebecca leaving for work in the morning, only to show an exact replica of herself entering the apartment 20 minutes later. Forensic analysts scrutinized the footage for signs of tampering or manipulation, but found none. The individual mimicking Rebecca moved with precision, dressed identically, and even carried her distinctive leather bag. Yet, according to time-stamped records from her workplace security system, Rebecca had already clocked in at her office across town. "We are faced with a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superiors. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can replicate her with uncanny accuracy." The inquiry escalated as fingerprints in the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's, and no foreign DNA was unearthed. Neighbors reported nothing amiss, only observing Rebecca's usual comings and goings. Mrs. Keller, a neighbor, mentioned a peculiar encounter where she greeted Rebecca upon her return home, receiving no response, a deviation from her usual behavior but not a cause for alarm. Rebecca commenced documenting the disturbances in a journal. Minor alterations within her home multiplied vanished food from her fridge, unauthorized searches on her computer, and unsettling discoveries of self-portraits on her phone, snapshots she had no recollection of capturing. In some images, her expression appeared subtly distorted, her smile too wide, her gaze too intense. "I fear I am losing my sanity," she confided in Detective Shaw during their third meeting. "Or perhaps someone is orchestrating this illusion to make me believe so." The breakthrough materialized when a pattern emerged in the security footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated Rebecca's residence during her absences for scheduled commitments like therapy sessions, yoga classes, or Sunday morning grocery trips. "Someone is intimately familiar with your routine," Shaw elucidated. "This isn't random, it's a targeted surveillance and infiltration mission." A forensic psychologist posited that they might be dealing with a fixation case, an individual fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, possibly aiming to supplant her entirely. Such occurrences, though rare, were documented in psychological literature, often stemming from a psychological fracture where the perpetrator fixates on a target embodying traits they covet: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The investigation honed in on a former colleague of Rebecca's, Lily Winters, who had been terminated due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily had closely collaborated with Rebecca, frequently remarking on their similarities. Post-dismissal, she sent Rebecca a series of unsettling emails, one of which read, "We could be one and the same. Sometimes I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to search Lily's abode, unveiling a chilling revelation that transformed the narrative from disconcerting to horrifying. One room in Lily's dwelling had been transformed into a replica shrine of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls were plastered with photographs, countless snapshots of Rebecca entering her apartment, shopping, socializing, all taken without her knowledge. A closet harbored duplicates of Rebecca's attire, makeup brands matching hers adorned a vanity, alongside meticulous notes on her mannerisms, speech patterns, and daily routines. The most incriminating evidence surfaced in the form of practice videos. Lily had recorded herself mimicking Rebecca's gait, gestures, and expressions. The evolution was palpable. Initial attempts were clumsy and conspicuous, evolving into imitations nearly indistinguishable from the genuine Rebecca. "She aspired to become me," a subdued Rebecca murmured upon viewing the evidence. "She wasn't merely imitating me, she was eradicating me." Forensic technicians unearthed sophisticated apparatus for fabricating key duplicates and cloning electronic access cards. Lily had upheld an intricate system for monitoring Rebecca's movements, including a meticulously detailed calendar predicting her schedule. However, Lily's ultimate motives remained inscrutable. Journals discovered in her residence contained incoherent entries oscillating between first and third person, occasionally referring to Rebecca as both me and her within the same paragraph. The final entry sent shivers down the spines of investigators. "Soon there will be only one of us. The stronger entity shall endure." Upon authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished without a trace. Her domicile bore signs of a hasty departure, drawers left ajar, certain technology missing. A nationwide alert was broadcasted, prompting Rebecca's relocation to a secure haven under constant surveillance. For 3 weeks, authorities meticulously monitored every locale linked to Rebecca's former life, yet Lily never materialized. The case took a disquieting turn when a security personnel at Rebecca's previous workplace reported an anomaly. Despite being under protective custody at an impregnable safe house, Rebecca was purportedly sighted entering the premises. Surveillance footage corroborated the claim a duplicate Rebecca had accessed the building using a valid ID card, proceeded to her former workstation, and delved into her files for 40 minutes before departing. The unsettling truth emerged: Lily had not fled, she had made her move. She now masqueraded as Rebecca, seamlessly integrating into her existence while the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case remains unresolved, with Lily Winters eluding capture. Rebecca Thorne opted not to reclaim her former life, instead forging a new identity in an undisclosed location. Detective Shaw preserves a photograph on her desk depicting two strikingly similar women, Rebecca Thorne and Lily Winters. At times, she scrutinizes their features, seeking disparities, the subtleties that would differentiate one from the other. The truly disquieting aspect Shaw imparts to fresh recruits is not that someone can resemble you or echo your voice. It's the fervor with which they aspire to assume your identity, erasing themselves in the process. Our identity is not merely what we present to the world, it's our most fiercely guarded possession. Occasionally, we only realize its worth when someone endeavors to purloin it. Story 22. The motel stood as a relic of forgotten days, its worn facade a testament to transient stays and fleeting encounters. The receptionist handed her the key with a cryptic warning, a peculiar look in his eyes. "Just avoid the last door on the left," he whispered, his voice barely a murmur. Intrigue tugged at her, urging her to explore the mystery veiled in the shadows of the night. That evening, amidst the hushed whispers of the hallway's flickering lights, she found herself drawn to the ominous door that beckoned her with an icy touch upon the handle. To the naked eye, it appeared no different from its companions, yet a subtle chill emanated from the wood, a whisper of breath seeping through the cracks. Detective Morgan Reed awoke from her slumber, drawn into the realm of darkness by the call of a crime scene shrouded in secrets. Crossing the threshold marked by yellow tape, the air was heavy with the scent of iron, a stark reminder of the violence that had unfolded within. The room bore witness to a macabre dance of contrasts: the pristine bathroom, the untouched bed, and the ghastly sight that lay in between. A young woman, her life extinguished, lay sprawled on the floor, her gaze fixed upon the ceiling in eternal silence. Reed knelt beside the fallen figure, her fingers grazing lightly over the evidence markers that adorned the scene like morbid ornaments. "Third victim this season," the forensic expert remarked, his tone devoid of emotion as he captured the scene through his lens. "The same haunting signature as before." Reed nodded in silent acknowledgement, her mind already piecing together the fragments of a sinister puzzle. The victim's attire spoke of elegance, a stark contrast to the nondescript motel surroundings. A handbag lay open on the bedside table, its contents untouched, a stark indication that this was no crime of greed. A deeper motive lurked in the shadows, propelling the hand of the unseen killer. The motel manager lingered in the doorway, his features etched with a pallor of dread. "She arrived alone, paid in cash. I never imagined." His voice faltered, haunted by the tragedy that had stained the motel's walls. The maid discovered her fate during routine cleaning. Reed scrutinized the room anew, searching for clues amidst the silence that enveloped the scene. No signs of forced entry, no struggle etched on the victim's form. A chilling realization dawned: she had welcomed her own demise, whether by trust or by design. Back at the precinct, Reed pinned photographs to the board, a mosaic of lives cut short by a shadowy figure haunting the fringes of society. 3 women, their features mirroring each other, bound by a cruel fate woven in anonymity. The whispers of a predator on the prowl echoed through the corridors of the station, driving the investigation into uncharted territories of darkness. The autopsy results are in, Detective Hayes announced, laying out the findings before Reed. Death by strangulation, manual. No trace of DNA beneath her nails, no signs of violation. Reed furrowed her brow, sensing a personal vendetta lurking beneath the veneer of random violence. As days melted into nights, the investigation delved deeper into the shadows cast by the motel's walls. Surveillance footage yielded no answers, painting a picture of normalcy shattered by unseen hands. Elaine Werner, the victim's identity revealed, emerged as a figure shrouded in mystery, a financial analyst with no known adversaries, no visible enemies. Her meticulous nature clashed with the randomness of her demise, a riddle waiting to be unraveled. A breakthrough emerged during an interview with Werner's sister, trembling hands clutching a cup of coffee as she unraveled a tale of hidden liaisons. She spoke of a man from her workplace, a man named C. The sister confessed, her voice quivering with suppressed emotion. Secretive, complicated, perhaps even married. Reed leaned in, her gaze intent upon the trembling figure before her. Did she ever mention his full name? Only C, that's all she ever uttered, the sister whispered, a thread of sorrow weaving through her words. The investigation pivoted towards Werner's workplace, a labyrinth of corporate facades hiding the shadows of unseen alliances. Colleagues painted a portrait of Werner as a consummate professional, a woman of secrets harboring a clandestine affair. Yet the threads of truth led Reed to a single clue, a business card tucked away in a desk calendar, bearing the name Charles Emerson, Senior Vice President. Emerson, the epitome of composure, exuded an aura of innocence when confronted, his alibi a fortress of denials. But in the depths of his gaze, Reed glimpsed a flicker of deceit, a crack in the facade that bespoke a hidden truth. Did Elaine Werner extend beyond the realms of professionalism in your interactions? Reed inquired, her voice a velvet whisper masking the storm within. A fleeting shadow crossed Emerson's features, a veil of deception swiftly veiled. Solely professional, he asserted, his tone stealing against the encroaching doubts. In the days that followed, forensics wove a tapestry of guilt around Emerson, linking him to the dark tapestry of death that had claimed Werner's life. Partial prints from her handbag found their match in Emerson's touch, a damning connection forged in shadows. We shared a bond that soured with time, Emerson confessed, his voice tinged with regret. She threatened to unveil our secret, to shatter the faade I had built. A bond potent enough to spill blood, Reed's question hung heavy in the air, a blade poised to strike at the heart of the darkness that enveloped them. Emerson's resolve wavered, his words a fragile shield against the onslaught of truth. I never set foot in that motel, he protested, his voice a desperate plea for absolution. Yet the web of evidence ensnared him, the digital footprints, the fibers of guilt woven into the fabric of his existence. The interrogation room bore witness to the unraveling of a man's facade, the veneer of respectability stripped away to reveal the monster lurking beneath. They threatened to unmask me, to unravel the tapestry of my life, Emerson confessed, his words a lament for the secrets that had bound him to darkness. The trial unfolded with a symphony of revelations, a courtroom drama that laid bare the sins of the perpetrator before a jury of his peers. Families gazed upon the spectacle, their hearts heavy with the weight of justice meted out. Emerson, stoic in his defiance, accepted his fate with a cold detachment that chilled the onlookers to the bone. A sentence of life without parole echoed through the chambers, sealing his fate in the annals of infamy. As Reed locked eyes with the man who had walked the corridors of darkness, she glimpsed not a shred of remorse, but a void, a hollow emptiness where humanity should have resided. The media christened it the Door on the Left case, a tale that resonated through the annals of true crime lore, a cautionary tale of shadows lurking in plain sight. Psychologists delved into Emerson's psyche, dissecting the twisted pathways that had led him astray. But for Reed, the case remained an open wound, a reminder that some doors once opened could never be shut. In the evidence vault, 3 keys rested in silent repose, each a harbinger of lives lost and secrets untold. And as Reed walked the corridors of forgotten motels, she counted the doors, each a portal to a world of darkness waiting to be unveiled. Story 23. Once upon a time, a mysterious package arrived in the mail of a quiet suburban neighborhood. It was wrapped in a plain envelope, devoid of any return address, containing a single brass key that had aged with time. The homeowner, Sarah Miller, couldn't place where the key belonged, but there was a strange sense of familiarity surrounding it. As Sarah tried the key in every lock she owned, not a single one yielded to its touch. It was a key without a purpose in her home. However, when she placed it on the coffee table, an old grandfather clock in the hallway, long broken and silent, let out a single eerie chime that echoed through the stillness of her house. Perplexed by this bizarre occurrence, Sarah reported the strange incident to the authorities. What started as a simple mishap soon unraveled into a chilling criminal investigation that shook the foundations of the serene neighborhood. The responding officer, initially brushing off Sarah's concerns as a mere mistake, took the key as evidence to pacify her unease. Little did he know that this insignificant brass key would unlock a Pandora's box of hidden horrors. Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with the Special Victims Unit, was handed the case file during the morning briefing. As he examined the unassuming brass key sitting on his desk, a sense of unease crept over him. There was something unsettling about it, something that whispered of dark secrets waiting to be uncovered. Background checks on Sarah revealed nothing suspicious. She was a retired high school English teacher, a widow with grown children living far away. Her life seemed ordinary, her hands clean of any wrongdoing. Yet the key held a sinister significance that begged for answers. Forensic analysis found no fingerprints on the key except for Sarah's. The envelope provided no clues, just a generic postmark from a distribution center. The key itself, a standard Schlage, showed signs of age and wear, hinting at a history shrouded in shadows. The breakthrough in the case came unexpectedly when Detective Harmon decided to delve deeper into the key's unique bidding pattern. A connection was made to a cold case from 7 years ago, linking the key to a storage unit where chilling evidence of heinous crimes had been discovered. The original investigation had hit a dead end, unable to identify the perpetrator behind the horrors found in that storage unit. But now, with the key resurfacing, the past was demanding to be unraveled. As Harmon dug through dusty case files and pursued leads, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The key led to Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor of Sarah's who had vanished without a trace years ago. A man of shadows, Jenkins had left behind a trail of darkness that now threatened to engulf Sarah's life. The search for Jenkins intensified as the true extent of his depravity came to light. A cabin, once belonging to his deceased mother, revealed a hidden room filled with rows of brass keys, each one a macabre symbol of a life taken too soon. Buried behind the cabin, the earth yielded the grim secrets Jenkins had sought to bury remains of his victims, silent witnesses to his atrocities. The manhunt for Jenkins spanned the nation, with fear gripping the community as the Keymaster's reign of terror was exposed. In a final confrontation, Jenkins met his end, leaving behind a journal that chronicled his crimes in chilling detail. The truth unfolded, revealing the extent of his monstrous deeds and the lives he had callously ended. For Sarah, the horror was too close for comfort. She never returned to her home, haunted by the knowledge that evil had lurked in the shadows of her ordinary life. The grandfather clock, once a silent sentinel, now a reminder of the darkness that had touched her world. As the investigation closed, a collection of brass keys sat in an evidence locker, silent witnesses to the horrors that had unfolded. Each key a testament to the lives lost, the truth unlocked by a key that opened nothing but revealed the chilling reality of the darkness that sometimes dwells behind a facade of normalcy. And so, as night fell over the neighborhood, the echoes of the grandfather clock's hollow chime lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the secrets that lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be brought to light. Story 24. Renovations always lead to unveiling peculiar things. Old newspapers, broken trinkets, forgotten photographs. But when the couple pried up the floorboards, a letter, neatly folded beneath the wood, caught them by surprise. The paper, fragile, the ink worn, yet the message was unmistakable. Don't trust the one who knocked. Before they could react, 3 sharp raps reverberated through the vacant house. The discovery sent shivers down their spines. Sarah and Michael had acquired the Victorian-era home at an estate auction, captivated by its intricate moldings and storied past. Little did they know that their renovation project would unearth something so disquieting. Detective Alina Reed arrived with her partner, the floorboards still lifted, revealing the shadowy space below. Her weathered hands, evidence of years spent handling clues, delicately retrieved the note with gloved fingers. The couple had already touched its inevitable contamination. Reed scrutinized their faces as they recounted the knocking sound. Their fear appeared genuine. Background checks yielded nothing dubious about Sarah and Michael. Newlyweds, solid credit, steady jobs. However, the house bore a more intricate history. Previously possessed by the Hargrove family for generations, the house sat empty for 2 years after the passing of the last dweller, Margaret Hargrove, an elderly widow who lived in solitude. Neighbors described Margaret as reclusive yet amiable. No known foes, no suspicious circumstances surrounding her demise, natural causes per the coroner. Nonetheless, an unsettling aura lingered. Forensic analysis dated the note back approximately 20 years. The script showed signs of distress pressure points hinting at fear or urgency. Margaret would have been in her 60s then, residing with her husband, Franklin, who had departed 5 years before her. Reed delved deeper into her investigation, sifting through county records and interviewing former acquaintances of the Hargroves. Franklin had been esteemed in the community, a retired teacher with a penchant for woodworking. Some of his handcrafted furniture pieces still adorned the house. A former student remembered him as kind yet troubled in his final teaching years. He grew paranoid, the student recounted, kept mentioning someone watching him. We all thought it was early dementia. A breakthrough came during Reed's interview with Margaret's sister, now residing in a nursing home. Her memory faded at times, but certain details remained sharp. Margaret feared him toward the end, she whispered. Not Franklin, no, the man who came knocking, the collector. Reed leaned in. The collector. Franklin owed money, gambling debts. The man would come knocking. 3 times, always 3 knocks. Margaret wanted to sell the house to settle the debt, but Franklin refused. Returning to the house with a forensic team, Reed conducted a meticulous search of the crawlspace with more floorboards removed. The cadaver dogs led them to a grim discovery beneath the foundation, wrapped in plastic, a male skeleton with multiple fractures to the skull. Dental records confirmed it wasn't Franklin Hargrove. Franklin had been cremated, his ashes scattered as per his wishes. This was someone else, someone never reported missing. Further excavation unveiled more a wallet encased in the plastic. The ID inside belonged to Victor Mercer, known to law enforcement as a loan shark and collector for an illicit gambling operation. He had vanished 2 decades ago without a trace. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place through forensic evidence and Margaret's hidden diaries found in the attic. Franklin had amassed substantial gambling debts. When Mercer came to collect with threats against Margaret, Franklin snapped. Tools from the workshop turned into weapons, the crawl space transformed into a tomb, the note turned into a warning. Margaret assisted in the cover-up, not out of malice, but out of fear and loyalty. Her diaries unveiled the torment she endured thereafter. I hear the knocking at times, even when no one's there. 3 knocks, always 3. Franklin claims it's my imagination. After Franklin's death from a heart attack, Margaret resided alone in the house, never remarried, never relocated, guarding the secret beneath her feet. Her diary entries grew increasingly paranoid. The knocking persists. I fear someone is aware. The case was officially closed. Victor Mercer's remains were returned to his surviving family. Justice, cold and belated, was finally served. Sarah and Michael sold the house, unable to bear its history. It stands vacant, the renovations abandoned. Local whispers suggest that occasionally in the stillness of the night, 3 distinct knocks resound through the empty corridors. Whether it's the settling of aged wood or something more sinister remains a mystery. The note rests in evidence storage, its message a chilling admonition: don't trust the one who knocked. Margaret never clarified whether she meant Mercer, Franklin, or perhaps another entirely, someone who had unearthed their secret and used it to torment her in her final years. Some enigmas, as Detective Reed remarked in her final report, are never fully unraveled, even when we believe we have the answers. Story 25. In the realtor's listing, there was no mention of a basement. The blueprints, meticulously examined, revealed no trace of it. Yet as the family peeled away the old carpet, they uncovered a hidden door. Its handle, heavy and rusted, required the combined effort of 3 to pry it open. A rush of stale air, thick with the scent of damp earth, greeted them as they descended the steps into darkness. Expecting storage space, they instead found a solitary chair beneath a swaying light bulb. And on the wall behind the chair, a chilling row of photographs depicting them. The Mercer family had moved into the suburban property amidst the winter's early darkness, the bare trees looming against the cold sky. They had admired the 2-story structure with its worn siding and creaking floors, believing it held character and history. Little did they know the depth of history the house concealed, and how violently it would intertwine with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the property with her partner, finding the crime scene unit already at work, securing the perimeter with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's voice had trembled over the phone as she described the shocking discovery beneath their living room. "We must document everything before allowing anyone else down there," Connors directed, gloving her hands with practiced precision. Camera flashes illuminated the stairwell as the forensic team meticulously captured the scene. The wooden steps groaned under their weight, leading to a small basement space akin to a standard bedroom, its concrete walls painted a dull gray. A lone chair, bolted to the floor, sat beneath the harsh glow of a bare bulb, casting eerie shadows that danced in the still air. However, it was the wall adorned with 37 photographs that held the investigators in their grip, each image meticulously dated and arranged in chronological order. "These date back nearly 4 weeks, Connor's partner observed, scrutinizing the timestamps on the photographs. "Look at this one, Mrs. Mercer asleep on the couch, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the kids in their rooms." The absence of forced entry, broken windows, or other signs of intrusion perplexed the investigators. The security system had never sounded an alarm, and nothing tangible had been stolen, only their privacy and sense of security. Further examination revealed fingerprints belonging to previous owners of the property, a house that had changed hands multiple times over the years, each family staying for shorter periods, selling at decreasing prices. None had ever mentioned a basement. "We must interview every former owner," Connors instructed, flipping through her notepad. As they delved into the property's history, discrepancies in records emerged: altered blueprints, withdrawn permits, redacted inspection reports. The investigation took a sinister turn when the contractor who had renovated the house 7 years prior vehemently denied the existence of the basement. His hands shook as he adamantly claimed, "That room was never there. I gutted that place to its bones." There was nothing but dirt and concrete beneath the living room. Digital forensics uncovered a memory card hidden within the light fixture, revealing a plethora of images beyond those of the Mercer family previous occupants, captured in intimate moments, mundane routines, and vulnerable instances. The case deepened with the recovery of audio files from a weatherproof box buried in the basement, containing recordings of conversations held in various rooms of the house. Despite an extensive search, no hidden microphones were found. "We must tear through every wall," Connors urged, her tone urgent. "Inspect the air vents, light fixtures, electrical outlets. Someone has been watching these families for years." Behind the photograph-laden wall, investigators unearthed a narrow passageway leading to a monitoring station, a desk, a chair, a laptop linked to wireless cameras, and a journal filled with meticulous observations of each family. The journal's handwriting matched that of the property's original builder, Edward Kelvin, who had mysteriously vanished from public records, supposedly deceased during the house's construction. His final journal entry ominously stated, "The next family arrives tomorrow." Fingerprint analysis confirmed the investigators' suspicions. Kelvin had never left the house. He had retreated into its hidden recesses, meticulously watching the families pass through his self-created labyrinth. After a 3-day manhunt, Kelvin was discovered curled within a crawlspace between the second-floor bedrooms, his body frail and accustomed to the tight spaces he had constructed within the walls. During interrogation, he portrayed the families as characters in his private drama, watched with clinical detachment as if they were specimens. He professed no physical harm or theft, merely a possessive observation. The families, including the Mercers, fled the property, leaving behind their possessions, haunted by the violation of their privacy. The subsequent trial unveiled the extent of Kelvin's surveillance network, revealing hidden rooms and observation points meticulously integrated into the house's design. The house, unbeknownst to its residents, had been fashioned as an elaborate viewing apparatus by Kelvin. Upon the jury's verdict, Kelvin remained impassive, retreating into his own mental architecture, where he could continue to navigate the house that now existed solely in memory. The property was razed, the families left to grapple with the realization that their most intimate moments had been monitored from within the walls they had trusted to shield them. In quiet moments, the families found themselves glancing at air vents, light fixtures, and corners, wondering if they were ever truly alone, if their sanctuary had ever been truly theirs. The violation endured, a lingering specter of Edward Kelvin's voyeuristic legacy, a reminder that even the safest havens may conceal unseen eyes and unheard whispers. Story 26: The Unveiled Secrets of the Victorian Home. In the quiet embrace of a Victorian-era home, Michael and Sarah Klein embarked on a journey they never expected. The house, with its ornate woodwork and high ceilings, whispered tales of bygone days, drawing the couple in with its old-world charm. It began innocently enough, a mere water stain marring the master bedroom's floral wallpaper. But as they peeled back the layers, a hidden narrative unfurled before them. Beneath the surface, a name emerged, Alina Winters, scrawled in ink, a haunting repetition that spanned the entire wall. Intrigued and unnerved, Michael and Sarah delved into the mystery of Alina Winters. Their search led them down a digital rabbit hole where they unearthed a missing persons case from decades past. The woman in the faded photograph bore an uncanny resemblance to the elegant silver-haired woman who had sold them the house, Margaret Cavendish. As dusk settled, casting shadows across the kitchen island, the couple's investigation deepened. Property records revealed no trace of Alina Winters, only the enigmatic Margaret Cavendish. The missing woman's story lingered like a ghost, a puzzle begging to be solved. With each passing day, the house revealed more secrets. Hidden beneath the floorboards, a trove of identification cards painted a portrait of duplicity. Alina Winters and Margaret Cavendish blurred into one, their faces mirroring each other in a twisted dance of identity. But the true revelation came with the discovery of Rebecca Eldridge, a name entwined with Alina's fate. Through a web of deceit and dissociation, Rebecca had woven herself into Alina's story, blurring the lines between reality and illusion. Forensic teams descended upon the Victorian home, unearthing long-buried truths from beneath the earth. Alina Winters, lost to time, found her voice in the whispers of the walls. Rebecca, in her fractured state, confessed to a crime long forgotten, her guilt etched into the very foundation of the house. And as the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Michael and Sarah stood witness to a saga that transcended time. Justice, though delayed, found its way to Alina's family, bringing closure where there was once only mystery. The Victorian home, once a sanctuary of secrets, now stood as a testament to the shadows that lingered within its walls. A place where the past bled into the present, where the echoes of a fractured mind whispered tales of love and loss, of obsession and tragedy. And as the night enveloped the house in a blanket of silence, Michael and Sarah found solace in the knowledge that some mysteries are meant to be unraveled, even if the unraveling leaves behind a trail of darkness in its wake. Story 27. The old Polaroid held secrets, a snapshot frozen in time from a forgotten birthday. Faces smiled, candles flickered, nothing out of the ordinary. Yet when the daughter inherited the box of aged photos, she noticed it. A shape lingering in the background behind the cheerful group. A man half shrouded in darkness, standing just beyond the reach of the candlelight. He didn't belong to the family. No one recalled his presence, but with each photo, he drew nearer. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the collection while sorting through her mother's attic post-funeral. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories held a treasure trove of faded photographs capturing past family gatherings. What should have brought solace turned into the prologue of a haunting tale. In the initial photo, he was a mere blur, a silhouette on the periphery during her 7th birthday celebration. The mysterious figure loomed by the glass door, face obscured, observing. In the subsequent photo, taken moments later, he had crept inside. By the third, he stood behind her uncle. None in the photos seemed aware of his presence. With a trembling voice, Sarah called her father, unveiling her unsettling find. "Dad, who is this man lingering in the background of all these pictures?" A moment of silence followed, then a sharp inhale. "What man? There shouldn't be anyone except family." Detective Marcus Reed attentively listened as Sarah laid out the photos on his desk at the precinct. Rain drummed against the windows, casting dancing shadows over the evidence. The detective's weathered hands moved deliberately from one photo to the next, his gaze narrowing. And no one recognized this individual. he inquired, his voice steady but intrigued. No one, Sarah affirmed, but observed the progression. She arranged the photos chronologically. The detective leaned in, the metal chair protesting under his weight. What initially seemed like paranoia morphed into a chilling reality before his eyes. The figure advanced purposefully through the party, photo by photo, edging closer to the children. In the final image, he loomed directly behind Sarah's childhood self, a pale hand reaching towards her shoulder, just out of frame. The photographer, Reed proposed, skepticism tainting his tone. My mother took all these. She set the timer and joined the group. Copies were made, a case file opened. Within days, everyone alive who had attended the party was contacted. None recalled the man. No outsiders were present. The property was secluded, a rural rental chosen for privacy. Facial recognition technology proved futile. The figure veiled strategically in each shot, as if aware of the camera's gaze. Yet there was a practiced, intentional air about his posture. The investigation might have hit a dead end had Sarah not uncovered more photos in other family albums. Different occasions, different years. Yet the same figure, always lurking in the background, always unnoticed in the moment. A tech specialist enhanced the images, unveiling hidden details under harsh digital light. A scar on the wrist, a unique ring, a partial reflection in a window revealing obscured facial features. A breakthrough emerged from dental records. The teeth visible in an enhanced image matched those of Robert Keller, a maintenance worker who vanished after being linked to 3 child abductions in the region, cases long gone cold. Cases coinciding with the gatherings documented in the photos. Records disclosed Keller's employment at the company responsible for cleaning the vacation property where Sarah's birthday had unfolded. He held master keys to numerous rental properties in the vicinity, sites where families had congregated, sites where children had mysteriously disappeared. Upon excavating Keller's former residence, authorities unearthed small items buried beneath the concrete. A hair clip akin to one worn by a missing girl, a toy car belonging to a vanished boy from a family reunion, a bracelet recognized by Sarah as her own, presumed lost during her childhood. Alone in her apartment, surrounded by the photos that unearthed decades of hidden horrors, Sarah awaited news from the detective. Remains discovered near one of the vacation haunts had been identified. DNA confirmed it was one of the missing children. She gazed at the final birthday photo. The candles bathed her family's faces in a warm glow, frozen in time. And there behind her youthful self, partially veiled in shadow but undeniably present, the figure loomed, patient, calculating. Invisible to all in that moment of joy. The revelation intertwined unsolved mysteries spanning decades. Families found closure, though not the solace they sought. The shadow in the family photos had stepped into the light of justice, his presence finally acknowledged after years of lurking in plain sight. Sarah gathered the photos, returning them to the box. They were now evidence, proof that sometimes the most perilous threats are those captured on film, yet unnoticed by the naked eye phantom figures traversing celebrations unseen, leaving only faint traces of their passage through time's frozen moments.